In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. George Orwell. Yeah. This is Blood Politics. The only podcast where we don't talk about politics. We be about politics. And our mission statement is to empower, educate, and encourage everyone to speak out against fascism. Speak out against injustice and fight for freedom and equality for everyone. This is Blood Politics, and we ain't stopping till they put us in the grave. We ain't gonna be quiet, and we ain't gonna be scared, and we ain't gonna go along with the crowd. This is Blood Politics.
Hop right into it. You guys want to just jump right into it? What do you say? I appreciate you guys once again. We're going to be a great show today. It is Friday, 29 May, 2026, and you have nearly made it through another work week in which you're not going to make enough to pay for your daily life. So again, thank you for joining a little bit of your, spending a little bit of your time here with me. I do appreciate it. We got a ton to talk about today, a ton to try to squeeze into the show. Shout out to the mods. Shout out to the chat. How's everybody doing? Much appreciated. Filter in. Welcome in, one and all. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Like I said, a lot on the agenda today. Judge pausing Donald Trump's $1.8 billion slush fund, at least for now, throwing a little wrench in the works, if as it were, to try to get that done. We also have a Daily Beast article detailing the similarities between the way, the Nazi government was run and how this current regime is running their government, not by direct orders, not through direct orders or things that are signed by Donald Trump, but by, people in and around Donald Trump's administration kind of listening to Trump's rhetoric and kind of trying to gauge what he wants to see. There's an article about how Pete Hegseth was kind of getting a talking to, if as it's reported by Donald Trump, about the removing of or denying the troops going into Poland. So we'll be taking a look at that as well. We got Jeff Bezos' big blue boner going boom big time. I don't know if you guys saw any clips of that, but holy shit, looked like a nuclear explosion down in Cape Canaveral there. So Bezos watching his big blue boner just go up in smoke. We'll be talking about updates, couple updates from the Strait of Hormuz. We got a hilarious Lego video that dropped about Trump. The Treasury now pushing a $250 Trump note, in case you weren't pissed off enough, right? In case there wasn't like enough things for you to be like, that's fucking disgusting. We don't want that. And that's just a waste of time, money, resources. And we definitely don't want to see that guy's face on anything. So in case you're not pissed off enough, yep, the Treasury is trying to push a $250 note with Donald Trump's face on it. We got clips from James O'Brien as well, talking about kind of whether or not people are starting to get tired of this. Obviously, the erratic nature of Trump as it pertains to the war in Iran as well. We got Jen and Pumps tearing into Katie and Stephen Miller. Tim Pool blames the embarrassing Freedom 250 concert and the people and the fact that like a lot of the performers are now pulling out of that. I guess they're trying to blame that somehow on like left-wing violence. I don't know. Tim Pool will try to explain as well. We got obviously the story of the Russian drone hitting the Romanian apartment block, and then that's as Russian military analysts are warning of a Ukrainian breakthrough as well. So lots to dive into today. First thing I want to say thank you to is the amazing first day that we had with our new NAFO Summer of Drones 69 Sniffing Brigade campaign. About $2,000 already on the first day. So I just want to give a big thank you already. We're at 1,684 euro, just above my head out of the 20,000 euro 500 goal that we have. So to see that we raised, I think that's roughly what it comes down to, is I think just under $2,000 on the first day, less than 24 hours. So thank you guys so much for your contributions. Thank you so much to anybody that's been. Let me see you on the board here. Who we got? I'm going to say that's Berger. I'm not sure how you say that, but I'm going to go with Berger Kuhn. Thank you so much for your donation. Thank you to Mark as well for your donation. Thank you to KO. And obviously Yakov, thank you so much, brother. And then Todd, who kicked us off in a major way with almost $530 right off the bat. So We are live here on Help 99 in case anybody has a buck or two to throw into the campaign. And like I said, I think we have the best patches in the game. I got to say, I think these are going to go quick. I think this donation and this campaign is going to go pretty quick just because of the fantastic patches we have, and that the fact that people are definitely going to want to have those in their collection. Whether it's the Kherson is Ukraine with the watermelon, the unbelievable James Bond 007 Skyfall patch, or my personal favorite here, the Summer of Drones, the Boston representation on that patch there. Obviously, drinking a beer in cheers in representation in, a sign of support to the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian military. You got the Zakum Bridge in the background. You got the Pru. You got the Boston skyline. I think it's fantastic. So, again, we're already 8% of the way there to the goal. I just wanted to give a big thank you guys, big round of applause, and a shout out to everybody that's been, sharing this out. Like I said, if you can't come up with $1, $5, or anything to put towards or into the campaign, just share it out to your friends, family, social media, anybody that you may think would be interested or could, potentially contribute to this campaign would be fantastic. So, like I say, help99.com. The mods are fantastic. They'll be dropping the link in the chat every so often. So again, if you know anybody or if you can yourself throw into this campaign, that would be absolutely fantastic. So Summer of Drones is here, and then we're here to represent that. So, all right, what do you say we dive on to a couple of these stories that I wanted to talk about as well? Let me throw this on the screen because this was reported by Politico, just one of the many outlets that was reporting on this as well, though. The judge pausing Trump's administration's anti-weaponization slush fund. This is the $1.776 billion, the $1.8 billion slush fund for Donald Trump's militia. The temporary order halts any payments from the controversial fund. And obviously, this is not going to be the last that we hear of this. I'm sure this is just the beginnings of this. So the federal judges blocked the Trump administration's effort to establish a fund to reimburse people who claim they were targeted by the weaponization of the federal government. U.S. District Judge Leonie Brinkema said the restraining order was meant to ensure that no funds are, quote, irreversibly dispersed before the legal fight over the newly announced fund has a chance to play out. The prospective fund has stoked intense bipartisan outrage on Capitol Hill, where lawmakers have described it as a slush fund for payouts for President Donald Trump's allies, potentially including people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Democratic lawmakers have threatened to tax the full amount of any payouts from the fund. But again, this is just some new reporting coming out there of the first kind of roadblock being thrown in the way. This temporary pause, this temporary order halting the payments there from the controversial fund. So just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware that that's taken place as well. One of the blatant acts of corruption, probably one of the, if not the most blatant act of corruption by this administration, where the president sues his own government and then drops that lawsuit where the DOJ promises to just set up a $2 billion fucking slush fund for anybody that was wronged or, deems themselves to have been wronged by the Biden administration in any way. And that, again, goes to the January 6th insurrectionists, anybody that was doing the white collar crimes behind the scenes, tried to hack into our election systems, setting up the fake elector schemes, anything like that. Now they're going to get, reimbursed or enriched even, again, if this fund is allowed to go through. So I just figured we'd pull that up there, let everybody know that at least, at this point in time, a judge has paused that weaponization fund, or the slush fund, as it's better known as. But this is what I was talking about on this one. This is from the Daily Beast here, where there's a lot of similarities, and I've talked about this on the show before, where during Hitler's reign, during the Nazis' reign, there it wasn't so much that Hitler gave direct commands, right? It wasn't so much that he gave written orders directly to Goering or to Himmler or to anybody else. He learned pretty early often with the euthanasia thing that he had going on, the T4 euthanasia program that he had going on, and the backlash from the German population, from the German citizens about what was taking place, and trying to eradicate people with special needs, anybody that they deemed unworthy of life. So he learned pretty quickly that he wasn't going to sign or put pen to paper and put his name on things, but it was basically the things that he said at meetings, right, at his cabinet meetings, much like Donald Trump, what he says in private when he's with Pete Hegseth, what he says in private with Marco Rubio or any of these bastards, right? So they try to interpret that, and they go and they make decisions and enact policy based off of what they think and suspect they want to, Donald Trump would want to see happen. So this is a story basically saying that Trump tears into Hegseth for targeting wrong country. And this is basically giving a story about how Pete Hegseth apparently created a huge mess for Donald Trump in his rush to keep the 79-year-old president happy. This goes back to the U.S. troops in Poland. Basically, it was some comments from the German chancellor that was really the problem. And in fact, Pete Hegseth decided to retaliate against Poland, basically just trying to, have, the least amount of troops, U.S. troops in Europe because of, again, the lack of assistance, the lack of help that they deemed that they were getting in the war with Iran. But it goes on to say here that insiders have revealed that the defense secretary's abrupt maneuver to cancel the deployment of U.S. troops to Poland triggered an angry phone call from Donald Trump, who was forced to explain that Poland was not one of the European allies that had earned his wrath, right? Hegseth blindsided officials on both sides of the Atlantic last week when he canceled the deployment of 4,000 troops to Poland at the 11th hour. The decision stirred confusion with the Pentagon and quickly sparked a firestorm of criticism from American lawmakers and European allies. Even the president was stumped by the move, it says. A current and former U.S. official told the Wall Street Journal. Says that Trump phoned Hegseth to demand an explanation for his decision to cancel the troop deployment, according to the outlet. During the conversation, Trump also told Hegseth that the U.S. shouldn't treat Poland poorly, given its close ties to the White House. An armored brigade from Fort Hood, Texas, was supposed to go on 9-month rotation in Poland, but Hegseth abruptly canceled the deployment in an effort to reduce the number of U.S. troops in Europe after Trump whined about European allies' lack of support for his war in Iran. Right, so it's Pete Hegseth basically taking it upon himself to try to interpret what he thinks Donald Trump would want to see happen based off of the commentary, based off the rhetoric of Trump, and based off of what he's perceiving as the lack of assistance from the European allies. So this is just hey, again, Hegseth taking it upon himself to be like, okay, this is something Trump would love. This is kind of a backhanded slap to the European allies. Obviously, it's a signal to Putin that we're willing to either not deploy or take people out of Europe. If they don't play ball, if they don't do everything that we want them to do. So this is exactly how the way in which the Nazi government was run. There's a lot of similarities, but this is one of the ways in which what happened. Himmler or Goering would take something that Hitler said in one of the meetings, and in one of the brunches and lunches and dinners that they had together, and then they'd go and have to put that into practice and interpret what he wanted to see happen without Hitler having to give a direct order or put his name on a piece of paper that could be traced back to. Right. So again, it's crazy the amount of similarities that we continue to draw between the rhetoric, the blueprints, the actions that they're taking, the way in which they promote their governance, the way that they go about governance entirely. Like, there's so many different similarities. It's fucking ridiculous. But it also says that Hegseth's decision was a head scratcher for some officials because it was Germany, not Poland, that had criticized Trump's war, the Journal reports. Last month, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz drew Trump's ire when he said that the Iranians are clearly stronger than expected and the Americans have no truly convincing strategy in the negotiations either, adding that a whole nation is being humiliated by the Iranian leadership. So it was those comments that basically sparked this reaction from Pete Hegseth, where Pete Hegseth was like, okay, Friedrich Merz said this, so why don't I retaliate in some way against Europe? Maybe I'll stop the deployment of these 4,000 troops to Poland, thinking that Donald Trump would be like, oh yeah, that'd be perfect, that's great, screw the European allies. And apparently, as is being reported, Donald Trump didn't really care for the decision. It says that the White House did immediately respond for request. Spokesperson Anna Kelly told the Journal that President Trump appreciates all Secretary has done and will continue to do in executing America First agenda with our military and prioritizing our war fighters like never before. So just yada, 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 propaganda. We got his back. He's done no wrong. He's never been able to do wrong. He's the best thing since sliced bread type of bullshit. But again, this is just something that I saw that was like, clearly there's some problems going on behind the scenes, whether it's, JD Vance's kind of, he's a little bit jealous of the way that Marco Rubio has kind of climbed the ladder, whether it's pertaining to Cuba or, his willingness to go along with Donald Trump and his war with Iran a little bit more than, at least the reporting would suggest that JD Vance has been on board with this whole thing. But I thought that was a kind of an apt comparison to draw where, even Pete Hegseth is screwing up to the point where Donald Trump's calling him out on, reacting against countries that really have no involvement and that Donald Trump hadn't spoken about. But because, Pete Hegseth was like, okay, this is something that Donald Trump has been talking about. He obviously hates our European allies. And obviously the less amount of U.S. troops in Europe, he'd be so happy about that. But apparently, again, per the reporting would suggest Donald Trump was not very happy TNT and gave Pete Hegseth kind of a talking to, a scolding. But, speaking of a scolding, I'm sure you guys saw this as well, because this is a little bit off topic, but, because, billionaires are having their moment in the sun right now and continue to trample all over the rights of the, of the American working class people, I'm going to sit here and laugh at any problems and difficulties that they have. And this seemed to be a pretty big difficulty, not that one, but this one. This seemed to be a pretty big problem for old Jeff Bezos's big blue boner, right? His big blue fucking penis that he shoots into kind of space every now and again. Well, apparently they were having some sort of engine test. And again, if you haven't seen this, the engine test didn't go very well. This is just a really quick, less than 2-minute kind of recap from GMA about the catastrophic failure. And again, the video footage coming out from this was just insane. Literally looked like a fucking nuclear explosion. I think it was something to the equivalent of 300 tons of TNT, I think somebody said. And I think it was something like if 200, like the equivalent of 200 Tomahawk missiles all hit the same site at the exact same time. This is kind of the explosion you would likely see. But this was wild. This was fucking crazy. And good thing nobody was hurt. This was kind of like an unmanned test, an unmanned mission. Obviously significant damage to the platform and the launch site itself, and clearly the rocket is no more, I would assume. But lucky and good to see that nobody was involved in this. No injuries, no deaths, as has been reported, as I saw. So let's see if we can just take a look at a couple of the angles and clips of this. Of at least millions, if not billions, of Jeff Bezos's dollars going up in flames, quite literally in front of everybody's face here.
Overnight, a catastrophic failure on the launch pad. A massive fireball erupting, lighting up the night sky over Cape Canaveral, Florida. A Blue Origin rocket exploding. Blue Origin founder Jeff Bezos says all personnel are safe. No one was on board. The company says the rocket experienced an anomaly during an engine test for the massive...
An anomaly. These fucking idiots, and the way that they report on like the quite clearly catastrophic failures and explosions of their rockets, whether it's Elon and SpaceX or this asshole with his big blue boner that he sends into kind of space every now and again. It's always something like, you can't just call it a disaster or just a catastrophic failure. It's always going to be like an anomaly, something different happened, something that wasn't supposed to happen necessarily happened. You think if this wasn't the outcome, this wasn't the goal you were going for, Jeffrey? You don't think, this wasn't what you were shooting for? Of course something happened. Of course something went wrong, you fucking idiot. An anomaly. I just can't stand these idiots.
320-foot tall New Glenn rocket. The disaster seen from the air.
Look at this. This is actually from a I think somebody that was on a plane that was landing in a city nearby that just happened to catch it on their cell phone footage. And clearly they're not very close, but look at how fucking that lit up the night sky. I mean, this was a big boom, let's just say. Big boom.
As a passenger jet was on final approach to Orlando. Other views of the explosion showing the blast, sending a massive shockwave rippling through the air. The
wow,
sound.
You can see the shockwave too there. Right? Watch this. We'll check out that shockwave.
Showing
you can see
the blast,
it going through the light.
Sending a massive shockwave rippling through the air.
Look at that.
The sound of the explosion taking nearly a minute to reach the camera. Residents in the area who are used to space launches and sometimes failures say this one felt different.
That is crazy and not normal.
This one was more of like a violent shake.
Bezos saying,
you think it was? I don't know if they give the equivalent to the TNT in this one, but
in a statement, it's too early to know the root cause, but we're already working to find it. Very rough day. Elon Musk, the CEO.
Look at this though.
Now, future launches are uncertain as experts predict delays.
Look at the mushroom cloud on that thing.
Loss of the rocket, but also the loss of the launch pad.
Early reports are that there's severe damage at the launch site. It's going to take them
One would assume. I mean, I'm just going to go out on a limb. I'm no rocket scientist here, right? I'm no engineer, but I'm just going to go out on a limb here and assume there's some pretty severe damages to the launch site there. But I think there was one more. I'm not sure if there was any other angles here. I kind of pulled up a couple of them to see if there was, if we could get both angles, all the angles on this one, because again, it's just nobody was injured. This guy just lost a shitload of money. And it's score one for the working class and another one against billionaires for their fucking idiocy. Let's just say, but let's see if there's any other angles we can see on this one. Look at that. Oh no. Oh, Jesus Christ. That's insane. I mean, that's fucking straight up apocalyptic, right? I mean, come on. It doesn't get much more apocalyptic looking than that. There it is from, I'm assuming, quite a distance away. I think there was one more on this one too. I forget. I think it's this angle. No, it might be the same one. But again, you can see a pretty substantial explosion there, seen by many. Let's just say, and again, Jeff Bezos' big blue boner not doing so hot, not doing so well as it pertains to his recent test there.
Video footage of last week's FP1/.
Actually, the video that started playing afterwards is one that I was looking for. And let me throw this one. I'm going to throw this at the end where it pertains to the Russian and Ukraine situation that I want to talk about. All right, next up here is going to be, now that we've had enough time to kind of laugh at, mock, and ridicule Jeff Bezos' big blue boner explosion there. Let me see if I can give a few updates, a few details as to what's been taking place with the Strait of Hormuz. Over the last few hours here, we've had a couple Iran launches of ballistic missiles from Jam City in Iran's Bushehr province a few minutes ago, followed by initial explosions in the Strait of Hormuz. This was reported 22 hours ago by the Hormuz letter. This is also 22 hours ago. Iran's IRGC Navy carried out a missile attack on 4 vessels attempting to bypass the Strait of Hormuz without IRGC coordination, including American vessels per the ILNA. So again, ceasefire, everybody. Ceasefire is still happening, still in effect, even though everybody's fucking lobbing missiles, drones, and bombs at each other. This is, again, from 18 hours ago. This is, again, detailing how difficult that the Israelis are now making this and how unlikely a deal is to come while the IDF and Benjamin Netanyahu continue to increase their strikes, can increase their military action against Hezbollah in Lebanon. We continue to see the West Bank and Gaza still clearly in the sight, the sights and the targets of the Israelis as well. This says here that Israeli officials are now privately urging Trump administration to completely abandon Iran negotiations, assassinate Iran's lead negotiator Ghalibaf, and immediately restart strikes targeting Iran's oil and energy infrastructure to, quote, trigger regime change in Tehran while not caring about massive impact of the expected Iranian retaliation on Gulf energy infrastructure per a classified U.S. intelligence assessment. Okay, that's very fucking important, as, it's not coming from outside foreign intelligence. This is coming from a classified U.S. intelligence assessment. Trump has already privately been backing away from the deal since Sunday under a, quote, extreme internal pressure from Israel and its U.S. domestic allies, urging him not to accept Iran's terms per sources close to this negotiation, close to his negotiation team, Based on this, an Iranian official is saying that Iran is has absolute zero trust in the Trump administration and the U.S. word in any agreement, adding it cannot regard Trump's decision as definitively finalized until the financial markets close at the end of this week, with the concern Trump will formally end the deal and restart strikes at the last moment. Again, showing the clear, distrust that takes place when you engage in a war as you're engaged in negotiations with the country. Typically, it doesn't work out well for the trust factor going forward in that relationship. But just to see if there was anything else reported here. Breaking Iran says the Trump administration is now desperately, quote, requesting an agreement multiple times a day through various channels to unilaterally claim a deal has been agreed, with Iran rejecting each of these requests, saying it will not respond until Iran's terms and goals are fully achieved and accepted, which is far from current reality per a source close to Iran's Ghalibaf. So again, just kind of showing you how desperately different and separate the two sides are still on what they're saying. The rhetoric, again, being reported by multiple media accounts that the deal is very nearly done. It's close. It's just have to go under Donald Trump's signature. Meanwhile, Donald Trump himself seems to be backing away from that. We consistently are seeing, drones and missiles lobbed into the strait, into, different regions around the Gulf there, which, again, doesn't speak to me to say that a ceasefire is in place. Typically, when you start firing, the ceasefire goes out the window. I'm just saying, though. And then this was a couple things I saw here reported. I don't quite clearly understand. Let me throw this on your screen. Why it says June 8th. I'm kind of confused as to what that's talking about, but it does say here And this is Dolphin Iran that we've looked at this account, several times. It's been kind of either close or right on the ball as far as what the Iranians are saying or willing to do or not willing to do. So this is saying that Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff will travel to the occupied territories early this week. The Israeli regime is under pressure to halt military operations in Lebanon if an agreement with Iran is reached. For this reason, the regime has expanded its operations in Lebanon and is seeking to be exempted from the agreement with Iran. In this event that it is not accepted, war will resume, and Iran will be Hezbollah's partner in any broad conflict in the future. And this goes on to say that Axios reporting stating that Donald Trump had requested a few days to approve the final agreement with Iran is incorrect, much like a lot of what Barack Ravid in particular at Axios has been reporting. The United States has repeatedly requested an agreement through intermediaries, but it is Iran that is refraining from approving the agreement due to its insistence on the fulfillment of certain conditions by the United States. The status of the ceasefire violations, Iran's frozen funds, and the Israeli regime's aggression against Lebanon must be clarified before any agreement, otherwise no agreement will exist. So this is a very consistent through line, guys. Like we've said, the Iranians have time and time again said that Israel in their attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon will be a big focus, will be a big fucking line in the sand as to whether or not some agreement is going to be reached, some peace deal is going to be signed. And again, this is why everybody's suspecting that Israel right now is attempting to upscale, to escalate their actions either in Lebanon or in Gaza to make it more difficult for them to, come to this agreement, to be a part of this agreement. And hopefully they can get this like exemption from being part of this, which is again, not something that Iran has ever said will be part of the decision process. They've clearly said, we're not coming to the negotiating table unless Israel stops their attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon, right? So why that would change doesn't seem like it has changed, but just to show you some of the rhetoric, some of the statements coming from the Iranian side so we can, better know what the hell is going on. Let me see, because this was one here that I wanted to put on because, we've seen a bunch of these. Sorry to laugh before I even put it on, but we've seen a few of these, and I think you'll get a kick out of this one. So we've talked about lately Donald Trump's kind of, how he talks about he doesn't like, gorgeous people. He doesn't like good-looking people. But this is something that I didn't think even the Lego videos would kind of hop on. I didn't think that the Lego videos would kind of touch on as well, but I was wrong. Because here's another Lego banger going after Donald Trump for skipping his son's wedding. And then obviously some of the more recent rhetoric and statements that he's been making against or about, good-looking men in general. So, let's see if we can dive into this and get into a little bit of trouble. But this was from Akon. It says, another banger. Trump skipped his son's wedding for this. Iran is laughing. So let's see what we can get into here. I appreciate you guys sticking around. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. This one's kind of it's a doozy. It's a funny one.
Donnie loves America.
And before I play this, I just want to reiterate, we are a very welcoming, inclusive, and big tented side. So again, this is just put out there by Lego. No slight to anybody that it may reference or mention. Okay.
Them biceps more. Donnie loves America, but he loves them biceps more. Hey!
Donnie loves America, but he loves those biceps more. Look at him. He's all over the fucking, what's that supposed to be, a general, I'm assuming? Maybe that's Raising Cane. And Donald Trump's just like fawning all over his biceps. He can't get enough of them, but it goes on. It gets better. It gets better. It gets better.
Graduation season, caps flying in the air. Donnie hit the stage, but he wasn't really there. Saw a cadet named Thomas, perfect score, ripped and lean. Orange man said, come up here, let me check the scene. Whoa, wow, look at this guy, look at these arms. Touching on the shoulders like he's casting charms. Hit him on the shoulder, man, hit a rock, bro. This ain't motivation, this is straight up shock. You're a handsome devil, boy, you're looking good. Rip off the jacket, show the neighborhood. Graduate sitting there like, what the hell? Donnie in his feelings under some kind of spell, he said, I consider all these guys with big muscles beautiful to me. It's not my thing, bro, clearly it be. He's so strong, he has those muscles, and he groaned. I ran watching this like, yo, this man is grown. Donnie, why you gay? Why you gay? Checking out the muscles every single day. Why you gay, Donnie? Why you gay? I ran watching clothes. What you trying to say?
Donnie, why you gay? Why you gay, Donnie? Oh my God. And again, I don't know if you're kind of, hip to the context of this, but I think he was speaking, what was that? Was it like at the Coast Guard, or was either Coast Guard or West Point? I forget now. But he brought somebody in that I guess, if from what I remember, had like passed all of his physical fitness tests or aced all of his physical fitness tests or whatever the hell. And Donald Trump brought him up on stage and again, gave the line like, when he walked away, I hate good looking men. I hate good looking women. That's okay. Good looking men. I hate. Right. And, pair that with the time that he said, don't worry, I'll go into the crowd and I'll kiss all the men and I'll kiss all the women, and how handsome he thinks everybody is. Right. So again, it's been brought up before, not the first time that this has been accused, not the first time that this has been thought of. Right. So again, it's just Legos now just hopping on this, and I appreciate them for doing it.
Now let's talk about family, let's talk about love. Don Jr. getting married, but Pops ain't show up. Third fiance, third time's the charm, but Donnie said, I'm busy, got Iran on my arm. I like to go, but the timing ain't right. I got a thing called Iran and other things tonight. Yo, we started a war just to skip the wedding. Iran pouring chai like, bro, who you fooling? Little Pete saluting, ready for the war. Marco making calls, opening every door. But Donnie don't care about his own blood. He'd rather flex on cadets and start up a flood. Don Jr. like, Pops, it's my special day. Donnie like, sorry son, I got biceps to survey. If I miss this wedding, I'll just catch the next.
Don Jr. said it's my special day. Trump said, sorry, I have biceps to survey. Sorry, I know it's childish, but I guess I can't get enough.
The ran sipping chai, sending Donnie a text. Donnie, why you gay? Why you gay? Checking out the muscles every single day. Why you gay, Donnie? Why you gay? Iran's watching clothes. What you trying to say? Yeah. Now the plot thickens, 1.8 billion on the table. Trump administration cooking up a fable. Slush fund for the boys who stormed the Capitol door. Proud boys QAnon, they want more and more. Enrique Tarrio first in line with his hand out. My pillow Mike screaming, what's this all about? George Santos claiming he deserves a piece. Rod Blagojevich like, finally some release. Lectin guy Brendan wants 30 million flatty ass. Chat GPT set him up a tier. Imagine that. Rachel with the battering ram, grandma of 8. She's rolling dough at home. House arrest of fate. 3 years with 8 kids and 8 grandkids too. That's cruel and unusual. What you really do? Brought unauthorized muffins, bro. That's the crime. Meanwhile, slush fund flowing corruption in its prime. QAnon shaman said, nah, that's blood money. Only voice of reason dressed up like a bunny. But then he sued the government for 40 trillion. Cold integrity? Nah, just trying to get that gold. DOJ memo said tens of millions.
Now they're mocking the slush fund, right? They're mocking the slush fund, the people that are going to have their hand dipped inside of that slush fund, if in fact it's allowed to actually go through. Talking about the QAnon shaman, bringing up the J6. There's obviously people in the background committing the white collar crimes, as we've talked about. So even touching base on the slush fund here.
People do the math, don't lie. 1.8 billion divided, that's $90 a head. That's barely 2 bags of meth. That's what they said. When they find out it's 90, they gon' riot again. Infinite money glitch, the cycle never ends. Cabinet full of criminals, policies a joke. Little Pete got the Pentagon Marcos blowing smoke. Donnie, why you gay? Why you gay? Hey. Checking out the muscles every single day. Why you gay, Donnie? Why you gay? Iran's watching clothes. What you trying to say? Hold up. One more thing before we close the show. Oval Office speech, belly button on the floor. 5-inch.
Please tell me that wasn't referencing the guy's belly button behind Donald Trump in that Oval Office meeting recently. It was like, I'm pretty sure that's what they're talking about.
From his face.
I can't. Hold on. I got to hear that last line again. I got to hear the last line about the belly buttons one more time.
Thing before we close the show. Oval Office speech, belly button on the floor. 5 inches from his face, protruding on the screen.
5 inches from his face, protruding on the screen. It's so bad. They even had a picture of it, the sickos. Who decided to do that? Good Lord.
Inches from his
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, geez, that's too much. All right, we move on. I appreciated that one. I appreciate that. You know who might appreciate that one too? Is Hal. Hal might like that one. That'll go with a couple of the other songs that he plays as it pertains to Donald Trump. Maybe being on the little more flamboyant side, as it were. But I did get a kick out of the one. All right, let's get into a little bit of this next clip. We'll bring in some brain cells finally into the show. My apologies for going through the bullshittery to begin with, but here's James O'Brien giving a little insight. Like I said, bringing a little education to the show here. And it's titled, Have People Lost Interest in the Iran War? I don't necessarily think that's the portion of the clip that we'll get into, the portion of the video that we'll get into, but he does raise some pretty good points in the first couple minutes of this. So I just figured I'd share this with you guys. We'll go through this together. I do appreciate you guys, and obviously appreciate James O'Brien and LBC for putting this stuff out there and letting us cover it. So hit that like button. My name's Brian. This is Blunt Politics. I would really appreciate your help in getting to 25,000 subscribers before midterms. Thank you so much for getting us past 20, and thank you to the mods and the best chat on earth for your support, your generosity, your kindness, and your contributions. Like I say, if you send $1 or $2 up to the Venmo there, you find some quarters in the couch cushions, and you can send them in either through Super Chat, sign up for a YouTube membership for less than a gallon of gas, or head over to patreon.com. 3 great tiers, perks over there, discounts to the merch site, all great things. I really do appreciate you guys for taking care of me, and I'm here rocking with you guys, so I appreciate it. All right, James O'Brien, take it away.
But before that, I mean, a really strange subject in a sense, because I'm obviously not a war correspondent. God forbid, I'm far too fearful and squeamish and fond of my own bed. But I have, over the years, covered military engagements. I've had conversations with you about various military engagements of varying degrees of seriousness and indeed length. And we've spoken to military veterans, we've spoken to experts. You have always been able, I think, to get a handle on what is going on, haven't you? You've always been able to, obviously not in Gaza because no journalists were allowed in, but in the sort of sense of the bigger international picture, you've always been able to get an idea of what was going on. And I think more diplomatically than militarily, you've known what the aims were. Whether they were.
What I think he's talking about here is the fact that you just don't know what's coming next. Like we've talked about this time and time again on this show. It's just the impossibility of knowing what's coming next. Even if you're a military expert, if you're an expert on war, if you're an expert on geopolitics, like it's becoming increasingly more difficult for anybody trying to get answers from this situation to get those answers based off of, the bullshit, the rhetoric and the propaganda coming from the U.S., the obvious, the obvious reasons that the Iranians would have to propagandize a situation. But people are like struggling to kind of grasp and come down to the fact that like the Iranians seem to be more like, I don't know, vested in reality than the United States regime seems to be, giving answers based off of what's actually taking place or might actually happen. So I think that's what he's talking about here. Like even in past wars, even if you were lied to based off of like the reason or the justification for getting involved in that war, like you could at least to a higher degree than what's taking place now, kind of guesstimate, give some sort of prediction as to what may be happening based off of, information, what's taking place here. It's becoming increasingly more difficult based on the lies, the amount of lies and how egregious the lies are that are being told based off of these situations. Like how many times now have we come out with the reporting of Barack Ravid have come out with the reporting? How many times have we crawled out of Donald Trump's anus to say that we have some peace deal right around the corner, right? Just to see that, either the bombs continue to be dropped or there's just no talks, no peace deals in the works whatsoever. It's got to be at least 10 to 15 times at this point, even, if not more. So that just kind of, a little piece of evidence to be like, well, it's difficult to see what's taking place and to know what's going to come from this when you don't have a clear understanding of what each side wants, where they stand, because they're just lying about all of the information.
Achievable or not is in many ways moot. You've known what the aims were, you've known what the end game would probably involve, and when it is reported that X has happened, and that report...
What was that? You say it went from $80 to $150? Sorry to stop that, but I was just reading this. Dustin says, Trump allowed me to fit $150 worth of gas in my car instead of just $80. And now I can fit $200 worth of groceries in one bag. Take that, libtards. I mean, I get the facetiousness of it, but is that accurate? Did it go really from $80 to $150? So basically doubling in the amount that it costs for you guys to fill, and I'm sure it differs based off what type of car, vehicle, truck that you drive. But again, this is a clear indication of how difficult life has become based off of these decisions and the repercussions from those decisions. So just kind of caught my eye. Sorry about that, Dust. Obviously everybody else going through the same thing is it's a shame that we have to deal with this, but we tried to prevent it.
Has its roots in the White House, then you would be minded to think that it's probably true. Don't attack me for being naive. I am aware that presidents have lied. And continue to do so. But generally speaking, my faith in the Fourth Estate, which is a fancy pants way of saying the media, the British media, my faith in the Fourth Estate is rarely higher than when it comes to foreign affairs, with a few obvious and glaring exceptions. And I noticed on the way home yesterday that a thing I thought was funny wasn't very funny at all. I have been doing this joke, and I think it's quite a good joke, about it's Monday, so it must be a ceasefire. It's Tuesday, so it must be a threat to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age. It's Wednesday, so it must be that the victory is complete and the war is over. It's Thursday, and it must be that Iran needs to stop attacking despite having an obliterated army. Iran needs to stop attacking us, otherwise we will do such things, what they are I know not, but they shall be the terror of the earth. And now it's Friday, and as you just heard in Dominic's news bulletin, the US and Iran are very close to a deal, but not there yet, except it's not a deal, it's a memo of understanding, and it's impossible to say when or if the two sides would finalise any sort of arrangement, which they would probably call a deal, or at least the White House would, but would be technically a memo of understanding, and is almost certain to return to a status quo.
I really don't find that to be a joke, right? And I know he mocks kind of it, to a certain extent, to kind of push the point that he's making, and to put to point out the ridiculousness and the absurdity of what's taking place, but to a large degree, the recounting of what actually takes place on Monday, Tuesday, Monday, he's going to, eliminate the Iranian civilization. Tuesday, a deal's almost done. Wednesday, don't worry, a deal's almost done. Thursday, we're going back to bombing. Friday, it could be on, either way, it's up in the air at this point. Like, I don't see that as being a joke. I see it as being like a clear representation of the lunacy of the times that we're in, and the information that we're being fed, whether it's by, the administration, the regime itself, or by the reporters that they have in their pockets, that are just so willing to put this shit out there every time that somebody says something to effectuate some sort of change in the markets, or to lower the price of oil for some period of time until the next missile drone is fired, and then it shoots right back up. But again, I think that's, I think he's taking it, he's being a little too hard on himself, I think, as kind of, how that's a joke. It's not really a joke. I think it's a clear indication of what's been taking place.
That would be inferior from a Western point of view to the situation that was in place before Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump attacked unprovoked Iran. And it will be almost certainly inferior to the deal that was signed by Barack Obama, or signed when Barack Obama was president of the United States of America, which Donald Trump elected to explode the minute that it became, the minute that he became president. And I like these conversations. We've been lucky enough over the years to speak to some very clever people and very well-informed people, much better informed than I am. And I don't say that through any sort of sense of false modesty. It's one of the things I love most about my job. Sometimes we wade into territory about which I'm not ignorant, but I don't know anywhere near as much as you may do. And we get extraordinary calls from all sorts of people, whether they're former members of the US diplomatic corps, or whether they are world authorities on matters maritime with a deep and long understanding of what the Strait of Hormuz represents, and how it can and can't be navigated. And of course, people who understand Middle Eastern politics in a way that you need to be a little bit more dedicated to a single issue than most of us can be. And yet we get the calls. People ring us up. And it's stopped. It's stopped. The articles, the analyses, and I remember I have a look at, even if it's a cursory look, I have a look at every single newspaper every day. I don't really open the Express, but I have a look at all the other newspapers every day. And there's no particular beef with the Express. It's just never got anything in it.
I think this is where he's talking about the fatigue setting in, right? People in their short attention spans on to the next thing. The experts that used to call in, the people in the Middle East, or the people that used to work as a dignitary for the United States that have knowledge on the area, have knowledge about the Strait of Hormuz. Like, it seems to be less and less that these people are calling in to give their insight. So he's kind of questioning here, is it the fatigue that has been shown time and time again in different conflicts around the world? Is that starting to creep in now as well?
That isn't already in the mail. I look at most of the newspapers every day, and I lean towards the ones that have got good foreign desks. Oddly, the Telegraph is still pretty near the top of the tree on that. Ditto the Guardian, less surprisingly, because they haven't gone mad on their comment pages in the way that the Telegraph has. The Times does a decent job. There are some very, very good foreign correspondents. The same is true, of course, of broadcast. And I don't watch broadcast news quite as closely as I follow print and online, but I don't think I've been seeing many detailed and expert analyses of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East on the telly either, or listening to it on the radio. And it's not fatigue, because we are still getting quite a lot of detail about what's going on, for example, in Ukraine. The latest figures, if you haven't seen them, involve estimates that 500,000 Russian troops have been killed. 500,000 Russians have died at the altar of Vladimir Putin's epic and uncontrollable arrogance. 500,000 human souls, 500,000 sons and daughters, wives and husbands. Extraordinary.
And I think that's on the low end of the estimates as well there. But, I think he raises a good question as to, like, how long is this going to happen and how long can people keep up with, obviously, the nonsense and the rhetoric that's taking place? How long can people stand to be lied to not have a clear understanding of what's not only taking place right now, but how we got there and what's to come in the future? Like, a lot of people, the short attention span that we're all aware of is definitely something that we have to continue to fight in these situations. And the more that it affects people in their day-to-day lives, the more that it's costing you guys at the gas pump, the more that it's costing us at the grocery store and to pay your heating bills and to pay your rent, the more likely it is to kind of consistently stay in the zeitgeist. So again, it may be the more affluent crew that is kind of losing interest well before the working class people that are still absolutely feeling the pinch, that are absolutely still feeling the crunch right now from the economic hardships placed upon us because of this war here. But let's see if we can dive on to a little bit of embarrassment here. I don't know if we should do the iFit. We'll do this one first. We'll get this one out of the way because this is just real quick from Dim Fool. We haven't taken a look at any of the Dim Fool's videos in quite some time now, which is a good thing. I like to give everybody a break from old Dimmy Fool every now and again. We deserve a couple weeks off from any of this idiocy and lunacy. But he's talking about the Freedom 250 concert that a lot of the performers are now apparently withdrawing themselves from for one reason or another. I think a lot of them are talking about how it was kind of misrepresented. It wasn't going to be this partisan event, and now all of a sudden it's turning into exactly that. A lot of people using different excuses to get themselves out of here, but apparently Tim Pool here is going to get across one of the dumber excuses, one of the dumber reasons I think anybody was using is because, what's this guy, Bret Michaels, who it's pretty difficult to threaten a guy you thought was already dead. You know what I mean? So, but he's saying here that the reason that Bret Michaels is pulling out of the Freedom 250 concert is because of safety concerns. And now Tim Pool is trying to basically attribute that to left-wing violence somehow. How he's pulling that out of the rabbit hole that is his arsehole, I don't know. I'm not really sure how he's getting that, but again, he's trying to, put one pin over here and one pin over here and draw a straight line together. But he says lefties threaten death on Bret Michaels for performing America 250 Fest. But like I said, it's very difficult to threaten somebody that everybody thought was already deceased. Anybody know that Bret Michaels was still alive? Because I didn't. I was unaware. But here's just the first minute or two from Tim Pool trying to get you to believe that it's like left-wing violence that is somehow responsible for the disaster that is this Freedom 250 concert that's supposed to take place. But just real quick, we'll get into this and we'll get out of this real quick.
This summer in Washington, D.C., we are going to have the Freedom 250 event series. This is a celebration of 250 years of American existence and super awesome. Very, very excited. Apparently, the Treasury is working on a $250 bill with Trump on it. And I'm just like, let's go, because I want a $250 bill.
How much of a fucking beta cuck, right, do you have to be to sit here and applaud and congratulate and to pretend that you're actually excited about a $250 Trump note with fucking Trump's dumbass face on it before the guy's even deceased, right? I mean, how much of a cuckbag? And this kid who loves to portray himself as sitting right in the middle, I'm just sitting here, sitting on the fence, looking over at the left, looking over at the right, making these really like independent decisions. I'm not too far left. I'm not too far. I'm right down the middle as he portrays himself to be. But, I don't think anybody straight down the middle is like really excited, really happy, and is going to go on and like, clap for his fans there because of the $250 Trump note the Treasury is now pushing. And I have a quick Washington Post article on that exact thing coming up right after this. But, just for another minute of him trying to bullshit his audience.
Just because carrying cash sucks, inflation is miserable. And it's funny because I think it was Luke Rudkowski. He was like, the $250 bill is the new $100 bill. And he's completely correct. But nonetheless, I don't care if
what a douchey prick, right? At a time right now where more Americans are struggling that at many points, or at probably any point in my lifetime right now, because of actions directly attributed to our president of the United States, things that he directly did, that we shot ourselves right in the foot, and that this is the reaction, this is the problems that we're now facing. So everybody right now struggling in one way or another. And Tim Pool is going to come on here and be like, you know what? I got so much money. I'm so sick of carrying around all these hundreds. What I really need is to consolidate all of these $100 bills that I'm making here, whether it's through the Kremlin or because of, Rumble or Kick or all the idiot fucking sites that he's probably streaming on. But he wants to make sure that he doesn't have to carry all these hundreds. He wants a $250 bill so that he can consolidate his wallet. You know what I mean? It's a real pain in the ass to have to bring all that cash through the airport, as I'm sure none of you guys know, because I've never had that problem. I've never been fortunate enough where I'm like, you know what I have right now is too much fucking cash. You know what I mean? It's just never been a thought that's crossed my mind. Never once in my entire fucking life have I been fortunate enough to be like, shit, you know what? Can we stop? I'm bringing too much money to the airport. I think we may have an issue. They may stop me at some point. Just not a thought that crosses my mind. And I'm just assuming, based off of the interactions and the people that I know watch this show, watch this channel, I'm going to assume that you guys haven't been in that position either, where you're like, you know what, fuck, we have too much money. Shit. You know what I mean? But he goes on here, like I said, you don't have to get into too much of this. He goes on to continue to talk about how he loves this $250 note, but then he goes on to talk about how much of a disaster this 250 Freedom 250 concert is. And then at the end of the video, he tries to attribute that somehow to left-wing violence, which is, again, asinine.
Having a meeting and we're like, what's happening for the 4th of July, America 250, let's go, and nothing. Nothing. I'm not kidding. We pulled I got the calendar pulled up for you. Nothing. They just say it'll be like it'll be patriotic events and fireworks. And we're like, yeah, I'm sure it'll be really good. I'm sure it'll be a great performance across the board. But from what we gathered, talking to people that we know in and around DC, the plans seem fairly flat. And I'm not trying to be a dick, but they do. Now, there's going to be celebrations all over the country. It's going to be really, really fun.
Wait, Tim, you saw that military parade that Donald Trump put together for his birthday there? You saw that, and you actually thought that there would be some chance in hell that Donald Trump would put together some, like, really effective and elaborate celebration for the country itself and not gear it very highly towards just himself? That's what you thought? That's what you got out of that military parade that was fucking utterly disastrous and embarrassing? That we had, what was that? How many months ago was that? Let me know when that was. Everything all is jumbled together at this point. Time is irrelevant now that Donald Trump's been in his second term. So let me know when that was. But I mean, it just, nobody saw that and was like, you know what I'm thinking? We're going to see good things for the 250th. I'm really, really excited and hopeful for the plans that Donald Trump is putting together to celebrate this country. Again, not a thought that crossed my mind ever. Not once.
In DC, at least, we found there's nothing to do. We were like, hey, let's do something really cool, and we'll go to DC. There's nothing going on. At least there is nothing stated, scheduled that we can do.
And I think he talks about how shitty the lineup is
then
too.
It's maybe even the full show. And so we were like, okay, let's do this. We've been working on a bunch of big plans, and in that, we were having a meeting, and we're like, what's happening for the 4th side of D4 with this year? And we got a bunch of big plans to pull out of Freedom 250 more. So I'm like, yes, please, for the ease of my business. Plus, it's funny. Right. Well, here's where we're at, my friends. Bret Michaels is the 5th act to pull out of Freedom 250 out of 9. There's 4 people left, and they're not particularly good.
More people have pulled out, which would have been like great instructions for Tim Pool's mom back in the day, right? Should have given him and his father some more instructions based on that, that specific line of instructions right there would have been great for Tim Pool's father back in the day there. But anyway, I digress. But he's sitting here talking about how more people have pulled out than are actually going to perform. And again, this is a 22-minute clip, which I'm pretty sure he has to get to 18 minutes at least before he has to throw in the bullshit about it being attributed to left-wing violence, in which Bret Michaels isn't going to show up, and it's not because of, I don't know, the fact that he's going to get backlash from it or can't sing in the first place or nobody gives a shit about Bret Michaels. It's probably, I'm going to say, more likely one of those three things than it is anything attributed to like threats of violence or anything. Like I said, it's pretty difficult to threaten somebody that you don't know is still alive. But, you know, going back to what Tim Pool was referencing in the first half of his video there, the first few minutes of his video, was the Trump appointees pushing for a $250 banknote. Now, how the fuck? Just again, the ridiculousness just never ceases to amaze me. The sycophancy never ceases to amaze me, and the lengths that this administration is willing to go to, like, I don't know, like to ensure some sort of lasting legacy when anything but that is possible and is true. Like, as soon as that guy takes his last breath, every building should be stripped of his name. Anything that his name is attached to should be burnt immediately. And again, especially this, but this is, again, a mock-up design of the $250 bill that they are pushing. Trump administration officials have pressed the office responsible for printing the nation's money to design a $250 bill featuring the president's portrait, according to 4 current and former employees, in what would be the first appearance of a living person on U.S. currency in more than 150 years. Starting last year, 2 political appointees at the Treasury, U.S. Treasurer Brandon Beach and his senior advisor Mike Brown, repeatedly urged staff at the agency's Bureau of Engraving and Printing to prepare prototypes of the note, according to employees who said they have raised concerns over federal law that currently allows only deceased people to appear on bills. And again, I think kind of one trade would be made for the other in that situation, if you catch my drift. But again, this is just added on to the insanity, the ridiculousness, the sycophancy, the corruption, the bullshit that we've seen from this administration, along the lines of the $1.8 billion slush fund, the amendment that says Donald Trump and his sons and his family and his companies can't be audited for the rest of fucking time. The crypto, the NFTs, the fucking colognes, the perfumes, the sneakers, the watches, the cell phones. Good Lord almighty, it keeps going, right? It's fucking unbelievable. But again, if you weren't pissed off enough, Donald Trump and the Treasury just trying to give you another reason to get out of your seats and into the fucking streets and to, if we can make it happen, march on the fucking Capitol. That's what we should be doing. I can tell you that much. All right, let's dive into this one real quick so I don't consistently piss you guys off with that nonsense, how frustrating that is. We'll have to keep an eye on where that goes. Obviously, I think that has a little bit more congressional approval than anything else that Donald Trump's trying to push through. So we'll keep an eye on that one. But let's dive on to this one, which I was pretty excited to dive into, because anytime people are taking the piss out of Stephen Miller and Katie Miller, I'm there for. So this is Jen and Pumps from the I've Had It podcast, and they're talking about how the Millers are having a stage 5 meltdown. Stephen Miller destroyed as Katie loses it on live TV, and this as Katie Miller went on, I believe it was Fox News, to try to intimidate, to try to dox in some way, shape, or form the woman that was behind one of the Twitter accounts that responded to Stephen Miller, basically calling him an ugly fuck, which is just blatantly and diabolically true. Right? It's just no lies detected, no notes, no changes need to be made to that tweet. So again, Katie Miller decided to go on, and after all of the nasty, bigoted, hateful, racist, fucking genocidal rhetoric that's come out of Stephen Miller and Katie Miller's mouth before, they think they have a fucking leg to stand on, and now kind of calling out somebody else for their rhetoric and responses online. Again, I think CNN kind of pulled up some comparisons with Stephen Chung and some of the rhetoric and some of the posts that Stephen Chung has out there. So again, if you want to call somebody out, maybe start with your own there, bitch. But this is, like I said, Jen and Pumps ripping into Katie Miller and Stephen Miller, and I'm here for it. So hit that like button. I do appreciate you guys. Subscribe to the channel if you like what you're hearing, if you like what you're seeing. My name's Brian. This is Blunt Politics. Let's get into it. Fuck Katie and fuck Stephen Miller. That's all I know.
Katie and Stephen Miller every single day put on a master class on how to be the most vile, horrible, awful people on the planet. They want so desperately to be famous. Katie Miller thirst traps all day, every day. She thinks all the time like, oh, I'm dunking on them. And so she married Stephen Miller, objectively unattractive. Objectively a Nazi, objectively just a complete bottom feeder piece of shit. And these people are so inferior and so insecure, and they have this connection to Donald Trump and they think, okay, we've arrived. They've never been elected for anything. They have never been like hired based on their merit. And Stephen Miller has his panties in a wad, in a complete wad, crammed up his ass because of James Tallarico. So he goes on Twitter yesterday and he's like, James Tallarico is transgender. And then I'm sure Katie Miller was like, ooh, burn, incredible. So the DNC.
And again, not to cut her off, and a little aside, I think, she brings up a good point there, because Scott Jennings, Ken Paxton, the rest of these idiots, you can tell that they don't have much to call out Tallarico on as far as policy is concerned. So they're trying to, utilize the woke bullshit. Again, they're trying to bring back up nicknames and different lies about him being, a vegan or a vegetarian. I forget which one they're saying at this point, but, they're just basically outright making shit up because they have nothing to call him out on as far as policy, because it's objectively better off for the people of Texas, objectively better off for the people of this country to have Tallarico's policies in place rather than fucking Ken Paxton's corrupt ass in place, right? I think that's pretty clear to see for everybody that has, again, 2 eyes, 2 ears, and a fucking brain inside their dome piece.
It's back. Pop this up. I say, shut up, you ugly fuck. I love this. And then
why'd they block out fuck, right? She does more, fucking dirty nicknames and swearing than most people do on their podcast, right? So I don't know why they had to censor that one. I think it was better off left uncensored. Calling him an ugly fuck, shut up, you ugly fuck, is just extremely appropriate as a response to Stephen Miller for anything. And again, I don't know if you've seen the side-by-side of Stephen Miller where it looked like he tried to spray color some hair onto his bald dome. But then he just a couple days later was bald again. But if you can pull that one up and have a good laugh at that one, that's a good one that'll put a smile on your face as well. But we'll let the Jen and Pumps continue ripping them apart here.
On Twitter, some of the Democrats, we're supposed to be different than MAGA, blah blah blah. Shut up. Shut up. Don't micromanage and police everybody. I like it that they called Stephen Miller an ugly fuck. It's not that deep. He is an ugly fuck, and he does need to shut the fuck up. And then I want to show you this video, Pumps, of Katie Miller reacting to all of this on Laura Ingram's show last night on Fox, and then get your take. Get ready. Warning, incoming, stage 5 pearl clutching right here. Play the clip.
I'm under attack today. When he said, the Democrats are, perhaps going to nominate their first transgender Senate candidate, talking about Tallarico, and they responded by just, basically saying, "Shut up, you ugly F word." Essentially, any word for the Democrats.
Yeah, don't call out the transphobia in the initial statement and tweet by Stephen Miller. Don't point out the ridiculousness, and again, the way that it's completely incorrect and ridiculous, and is obviously used as a slight, as slander against transgender people in general. Don't call that out, you Nazi bitch. One Nazi can't call out another Nazi, which is why Laura Ingraham is probably not ever going to call out Stephen Miller, because one Nazi to another is what you're going to do. So they'd rather bring up the response here, which is again just blatantly true, right? Objectively true, and has one bad word, one curse word in it, and that's kind of a bigger deal to them. Not so much that the trans hate, the trans bashing, the transphobia that Stephen Miller's engaged in the outright lying about a political candidate going for running for Senate in Texas. Don't call any of that out, but definitely call out the response by the Democrats that said, "Shut up, you ugly fuck." You can tell where the agenda lies for these people.
That's their little Twitter account.
This is the same violent political rhetoric that is leading people to shooting up, whether it be the White House Correspondents' Dinner or President Trump and Butler. But what it remains to be seen is this is an anonymous account, and it is.
And in case you're living under a rock and you're very lucky and fortunate not to know who Katie Miller is, this is Katie Miller above my head. This is the unfortunate wife of Stephen Miller, and she's now talking about how that "shut up, you ugly fuck" was somehow now interpreted as a violent statement. Somehow that was a threat now, as it were. If you listen to Katie and Stephen Miller and the rest of these Republican fucking snowflakes, that's the reason for all the violence. Those types of comments, not the Nazi rhetoric, not the trans bashing, not the outright lies by people like Stephen Miller and everybody surrounding him. None of that's leading to the degradation of our society and obviously the polarized political system and environment that we're in nowadays. None of that is. But it's the responses to Nazi pricks like Stephen Miller. That's what's actually doing it, which is what she's trying to get you to believe here. Again, tough to get me to believe that as you're sat next to a Nazi bitch like Laura Ingraham.
actually by a sad liberal woman named Paulina, which is why Pew says 50% of liberal women at some time have identified that they have a mental health disorder. And she is certainly one of them. What a sad state for the pathetic Democrat Party.
Angie, what about, you're a liberal woman. Do you have a mental disorder?
Yeah, I do. It's called Katie Miller. Shut the fuck up, you stupid. That's my mental disorder. Here's the thing.
Love it.
I just want to point out what she didn't address. Katie Miller did not get on there and go on and on about how handsome Stephen Miller is, how he believes in people, how he wants every human to have rights. She didn't do any of that. She goes on this liberal, like, Katie, you married the world's fucking most unfuckable man. You are having your 4th child with him because the two of you spew hate as an aphrodisiac. So please do not tell me about liberal women, because here's the deal. I would rather be a barren, never having had sex liberal woman than fuck Stephen Miller on all the sex drugs Amsterdam can provide. So enough, Katie Miller.
So
Oh, I love it. Angie coming with the heat on that one. I got to say, I don't know who typically gets more of the clips on this show, but Angie coming with the fire on that one. I'd rather be a barren, never having had sex liberal woman than ever having sex with Stephen Miller on all of the sex drugs in Amsterdam. It's fucking crazy. Oh, man. Oh, that was great. But again, like I said, anytime anybody's going to rip into Stephen and Katie Miller, and this goes on, like I said, this is about 16, 17 minutes long. Unfortunately, we don't have the time in the podcast and the live stream to play all of it as much as I would love to. But maybe just another minute. No, you can never get enough of Stephen Miller and Katie Miller bashing. So stick with me. Hit the like button. We'll go on for at least another minute. We'll see what Jen's response is.
She throws out the gal who runs the Democrats account, Paulina, and she thinks it's a huge burn to say she is unmarried and doesn't have children. And Katie, fucking and getting pregnant, your parents
Which
did
again
it.
is another slap in the face is the fact that the woman that she called out, the woman that runs this account, is about 20 times more attractive than Katie Miller is, if I do say so myself. Like, she seems to be a badass. She seems to be very attractive and kind of one up on Katie and Stephen Miller, which is again even more beautiful. The fact that Katie Miller decided to call her out. Now everybody's getting acquainted with who's running this account. She's gotten more followers. I believe she was interviewed by Midas Touch. So again, I don't think this went the way that Katie Miller thought it was going to go. I think this kind of backfired mightily.
Parents did it. I did it. Pumps did it. Walk outside. The majority of the people around you have done it. This is not like this great of an accomplishment. Now, I do concede for you and Stephen Miller to be able to do this is really extraordinary. It is extraordinary that you found each other, because I think without you two existing together at the same time, the same place, Katie, I don't think you would be breeding either. So I think she is so in awe of breeding. Because for the longest time, she and Stephen thought, who on earth is ever going to fuck us? Yes. We're going to be childless. We're going to be.
So again, that's Jen and Pumps there giving their 2 cents on Katie Miller's recent appearance there. And again, the response to the shut up, you ugly fuck, in response to Stephen Miller's, transphobia and him trying to, get one over on James Tyler Rico, as it were. But what do you say we move on before I get myself in too much trouble on that one? But again, this is a big story that a lot of people were talking about overnight. Obviously, a lot of people wondering what took place, if it was intentional, if it was not intentional. Obviously, people bringing up the fact that Romania is a NATO country, and this is not the first time this has happened, but I do believe it's the first time that people and injuries have been sustained as a result of a I don't know what you want to call it, an off-flight and off-target Russian drone. But let me throw this on your screen here, because this is just a quick BBC News update about the Russian drone that hit a Romanian apartment building. And I believe that's in Galatz, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll pull up on the map and show everybody exactly where that is, because a lot of people asking me how the hell this happened. Like, how the hell would Russia shoot all the way through Moldova into Romania? But again, I'll show you on the map where it becomes more evident clearly once you see it, and where you see where the proximity of this city, of this town, to the border of Ukraine. It becomes a little bit more apparent on how this could have taken place. And again, we've talked about time and time again the incompetency of the Russian military. So again, I wouldn't put it past them for putting in the wrong coordinates, having a malfunction, or again, even doing this on purpose is not beyond the realm of possibility for these cocksuckers anyway. So this, again, BBC News, just kind of giving us a quick update. And then, like I said, I'll show you on the map where it is. And then I got a couple updates, one from Preston Stewart detailing how even the Russian side now is calling, or at least expecting, some sort of Ukrainian breakthrough. And then what else do we have here? What's the other one had here? Oh yeah, there's another update. I'll save that one though, because you'll never guess who is taking a family vacation to St. Petersburg, Russia, and she is really excited. I'll give you a little hint. It's a she, very prominent at one point MAGA podcaster, somebody that just cracked 6 million subscribers on her YouTube. Where's she going for vacation? She's going to Russia. Okay, so we'll detail that in just a couple of minutes. But let's start with this one here. Again, just kind of detailing a little bit of what took place last night with the Russian drone hitting the Romanian apartment block, and kind of any details we need to hear from that. So, all right, let's jump into it.
European leaders are condemning Russia after a drone crashed into an apartment block in the Romanian city of Galați, close to the border with Ukraine. Fragments of Russian drones have fallen on Romanian territory many times. Now, I'm
not going to say I'm perfect with my pronunciation by any stretch of the imagination, but I did do my due diligence to look up the pronunciation of the town that this took place in. Obviously, the surrounding towns. I'm a dork. I love looking at maps and seeing and kind of visualizing what actually took place. And I believe it's Galați, the way that it's pronounced. I know that it looks like it's Galați, but I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any Romanian speakers in the chat, anybody that is up on their Romanian history, let me know if I'm right or wrong, but I believe it's Galați. Like the TI at the end is the TS, Galați. But like I said, let me know if I'm wrong. I typically like to get my pronunciations as correct as possible, as close as possible. But again, I digress.
First time citizens of the NATO member state have been hurt. 2 people were injured and around 70 people evacuated after the drone blast caused a fire. Bucharest has accused Moscow of a serious and irresponsible escalation and summoned the Russian ambassador. The head of NATO says that Russia's reckless behaviour is a danger to us all and assured absolute solidarity with Romania. Well, let's speak to our correspondent, Nick Thorpe, who joins us from neighbouring Hungary. Nick, tell us all of the details about this strike and the Romanian response to it.
Sure. Well, as far as we understand, about 2 o'clock this morning, this drone was first detected, and within 4 minutes of
Can we just right now appreciate, I know this is an aside, can we just appreciate that while we're getting the updates on this Russian drone hitting the Romanian apartment complex, we can consistently see in the top corner Jeff Bezos' giant blue boner, his big blue fucking dildo that he sends into space. We can consistently see that exploding. So we kind of get like a twofer here.
Romanian security forces detecting it. It struck a 10-story block of flats in Galați. This is a significant port city, 200,000 or so inhabitants, and in the subsequent explosion and fire. So this was not just a fragment of a drone as we've seen before, but actually an armed drone which exploded on impact, injuring a 54-year-old woman and a 14-year-old child. The Romanians, in their response, the deputy head of the armed forces said this does not constitute an attack on Romania, but it's the consequence of an attack on neighbouring Ukraine.
And the response has been widespread, hasn't it, from NATO allies and also European Union officials?
That's right. Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, immediately rang Nicu Jordan, the Romanian president. There have been other messages also from other EU and NATO countries. The president of Romania, Nicu Jordan, has summoned a meeting, which is beginning as we speak now, of the Supreme Defense Council. And
I'm seeing this here. There's a couple more details. I don't know if they've yet been confirmed or corroborated, but this is at least what's being reported out there. This is from AMK Mapping and says what appears to be a Russian Garand 2 or Jibera drone struck a high-rise apartment in the building in Galați, Romania, around 13.5 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. Prior to the attack, air raid alerts were issued in parts of the country due to the drone incursion into Romanian airspace. At least 2 people were injured. 70 were evacuated from the building, where a fire subsequently broke out. Romanian authorities say that they are investigating the source of the drone. However, at the time of this attack, a large-scale Russian Garan 2 drone attack was underway on the Ukrainian port city of Ranai, which lies directly opposite the border with Romania, which, again, gives you pretty much everything you need to know as far as that's concerned. But here's a couple pieces of video coming from that. I'm assuming some people in the vicinity able to pick up either the drone flight or the explosion afterwards. See if I can just throw this on the screen. We take a look at this one. So I wasn't able to quite catch it, but that would kind of detail that they heard the sound and kind of, fumbled around as quickly as possible to kind of get their cell phone out and just managed to catch the, the last second there before it made impact. Let's see, was there another video here? There's one of the remnants of the drone, I believe. Again, some clear remnants from the drone that hit, and then this is just from another angle, a picture of the subsequent fire that started in that apartment block there. But let me see if I can throw this on the screen. And like I said, just before we dive back into one of these other videos, I can kind of pull this up and let you guys know what's probably I'll just go to Deep State, show you on the map where this is real quick. Share this tab instead. All right, so we'll go into down in this area here. Right. So a lot of people were suspecting, or I'm at least assuming, that this is where the territory of Ukraine ends here. I don't know if you'd call this a gulf. I'm not sure what the name of this little estuary is, the Dniester estuary, apparently. But, a lot of people, I'm assuming, when they look at a map, would suspect that the Ukrainian border, comes along this, and this is not Ukrainian territory. But if you widen out the map, you can see quite clearly that the country of Ukraine and the borders following along here does have this little jet back towards the west. And you can kind of clearly see here's Galat in the, you can see how close it is to the Ukrainian border. I could even do a ruler. We'll go from the outskirts of Galat to, say, the border here, which is, again, about 11.5 miles. So you can clearly see. And this was the town in Ukraine that was under siege from the drone attack, that were utilizing the same exact drones that had, in fact, hit that apartment building, as per was reported. But, yeah, it's on the opposite side of the Danube. And like I said, about 13.5 kilometers, 10.5 miles, depending on where you're taking the distance from. This is the exact location of the strikes here, this city here. So just to kind of give everybody a visual idea, visual representation of why or how this may have taken place. Like I said, I think a lot of people were suspecting that, it was going over Moldova or all the way through Moldova before it had to happen. But if you look at where it is, you look at the Russian control over Crimea, obviously their control over southern Ukraine, and where the drones could possibly be coming from, the missiles could possibly be coming from, you can see quite clearly how they could, either put in the wrong targets, the wrong coordinates, or in fact just get something wrong and have it go, have it fly too far. So just to give everybody a kind of a visual representation, a visual idea of how this took place or where it took place, more along those lines, that will kind of do it there. But this kind of brought up the response here by a few people that I wanted to take a look at. You got Mike Pompeo just to my right here that says the Russian drone crash in Romania is the latest in a series of provocations against NATO by Putin. This is far from the behavior of somebody seeking peace, and the West must respond accordingly. So again, a little bit surprising to hear from Pompeo in that regard. Here's Glenn Deason. It says, Russia appears to have decided that the retaliation is required to restore its deterrence. And that's posting a Dmitry Medvedev post that says, citizens of EU countries, you should realize your authority have unilaterally entered into a war with Russia. So be vigilant and don't be surprised by anything. The peaceful sleep is over, but you know who to ask and why. So again, a veiled threat there by Dmitry Medvedev. But I saw this even by Viktor Orban. We express our sympathy with those injured in the drone attack against neighboring Romania. This incident reinforces the fact that the war poses a direct threat to the neighboring countries, right? So he's talking about the act that Russia had in striking in Romania, the threat that this war poses, right? We have a clear indication. We have clear knowledge of who started this war. So what do you think the next line should be? We're going to go help and support Ukraine in their defense against Russia, who started this war? No, of course not. It's Viktor Orban. He says, we therefore call on the Hungarian government to maintain the policy of neutrality. So this war is so fucking destabilizing. It's so dangerous. It has so much impact on all of our neighboring regions that we're going to stay neutral. It's like, what? That doesn't make any fucking sense to what you were just talking about. You just said that it was like an existential threat to not only you, but your neighbors. That, obviously we clearly know who started this war, which kind of gives you only one side that you could be on if that's in fact what you believe. But here he says, we therefore call on the Hungarian government to maintain the policy of neutrality established by the previous government, which is his, and to refrain from taking any steps towards the pro-war policy advocated by parts of Europe, which I thought was kind of ironic that he was saying that NATO is going to do nothing about Russian drones crossing into NATO. All we have is strongly worded statements. NATO is a paper tiger, yada, yada, yada. So again, I just pulled up some statements on that to see what trouble we could get into. But let me show you this real quick. Because I'm sure some of you in the chat have already guessed, and I apologize if it's already gone through where you've put in your guess. But in case you haven't already, this is who's taking a trip to Russia, ladies and gentlemen. I believe the excuse is that she's going for some, I think she says economic forum, if I remember correctly. But in reality, she's treating it like a family vacation because of how long she's wanted to go visit, St. Pete. And again, nothing to take away from the city of St. Petersburg or Moscow. I'm sure, again, they would be lovely places to visit at some distant point in the future when they get their fucking shit together. But again, we've talked about Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, the rest of the fucking idiots that were wrapped up in the tenant media scandal, getting paid directly from the Kremlin, through these like ridiculously anonymous sources that they've never met. They were given this like stupid false name about, given no information, but didn't question it. $100,000 per episode, a couple $1 million for a couple shows is pretty good money, right? It's something that you're probably not going to question. But here's Candace Owens in the very last part of her recent podcast, letting her fans know that she's not going to be on for a week because she's going to be inside of Russia, and she's so goddamn excited to go inside of Russia. And again, kind of begs the question where she's getting paid from, where this money's coming from. Based upon some of the previous statements from Candace Owens against Ukraine about the war in Ukraine, one kind of was left to consider and one to wonder exactly why and what the exact purpose is going to be that she is going to St. Pete and Russia. And again, I would be kind of skeptical to think that Candace Owens would be going to Russia without the knowledge of Vladimir Putin, or at least his government in some way, shape, or form. We know how kind of they love keeping tabs on Americans that are inside. And I believe right now, if I'm not mistaken, the United States doesn't have like a full-on travel ban. There's no law right now telling American citizens that they can't go to Russia. I believe it's more of a like, hey, we're strongly advising nobody to go to Russia. Like whether, hold on, let me see here. I can actually pull this up, I think, real quick. Let me see if I can do that. U.S. Russia travel. Yeah, travel restrictions to Russia. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Because I don't think there's, like I said, I don't think there's any laws in place or anything like that. Yeah, it says U.S. Department maintains level of 4, which is a do not travel advisory, right? Not a law, not stating specifically that you can't do it or anything like that, but basically urging Americans not to travel there for any reason whatsoever and to immediately leave that country, in fact. And it's because of these things like wrongful detention, right? I'm blanking on the basketball players now, Brittany Griner, right? I mean, that's a great example of, a high-profile American athlete getting caught up at the airport, I believe. She had some sort of, I think it was a vape or something in her bag, and she was held for a considerable amount of time and used as an exchange in getting back some, Russian criminals. So that's one reason, right? Wrongful detentions. I think it would be very effective if the Kremlin, if the Russians were to kidnap Candace Owens, I think they'd be able to get a lot in return, especially because of how influential she's been in the MAGA movement, in the conservative movement, and Donald Trump being president right now. Of course, I'm not suggesting that or giving any advice to that effect. I'm just saying I think it wouldn't be past the realm of possibility or the idea that the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin would be capable of that. I was trying to word that very carefully. And this also goes on to say limited consular assistance. So obviously the U.S. embassies in Moscow have been heavily reduced as far as staff is concerned. So if you do get caught up with the FSB, if you do get caught up with the Kremlin, if you do get yourself in some trouble, you're not going to have the assistance that you once had with the staffing that was at the U.S. embassies in Russia, in the consulates and stuff like that. Banking and sanctions. So it says here, U.S. credit card and debit cards will not work in Russia. Electronic money transfers are practically impossible due to ongoing sanctions. So if for some reason you find yourself stuck in the country for a considerable period of time for one reason or another, what are you going to do for money? We talked about earlier, there's only so much cash that you can bring into a certain place, legally at least. Dual citizenship. Russia does not recognize U.S. citizenship for U.S. Russian citizens. And it also says terrorism and unrest. Obviously, you'd be a big target there. And then entry requirements. Americans still require, a valid visa for entry. Additionally, bringing electronic devices can be highly risky, as security services frequently monitor them and use stored information to arrest foreign nationals. So again, just some of the reasons behind the level 4 do not travel advisory to Russia. But again, it doesn't seem to matter too much to our good friend here, our old friend Candace Owens, who is more than happy, more than excited to go take her recent family vacation in Russia. And again, this is just her telling her audience, and listen to how she explains it. Well, you know what? If I actually put that on your screen and then showed you, but here we go.
You guys, a couple of announcements. I am going to be off air next week. Next week, I'm actually going to St. Petersburg. I'm so excited for that. I have been wanting to go to St. Petersburg for a very, very long time, just as a Christian in general, just to see some of those cathedrals and churches. And we're finally making it happen, a family trip. And so that's happening. So I'll be off air for an entire week. I can't wait for the headlines. People saying I guess I'm funded by Iran and Russia and probably Pakistan. Obviously not true. My husband's been to Russia quite a few times because he fishes.
Wait, what?
And
I'm sorry. Did she say her husband's been to Russia a bunch of times? I'm going to say that's going to throw up a red flag. Why does she say her husband's been to Russia a bunch of times? Listen to this.
My husband's been to Russia quite a few times because he fishes. And Europeans just get
because he fishes. He's been to Russia a bunch of times because he fishes. There's no fish in between wherever the fuck you guys live and Russia that your motherfucking husband could put a line in the water, a hook in the water and catch. I'm sorry. It just seems like a really odd excuse for somebody traveling to Russia multiple times is because of the fishing. Not saying it hasn't been done, right? I'm sure Jeremy Wade is probably one of a few people that can say he's been to a lot of these different nations, whether good or bad nations, for the purpose of fishing. I just don't know how well-known Candace's husband is for the whole fishing thing and why it warrants 5 or 6 or 7 trips to Russia. Again, just gonna go out on a limb and say that's throwing up some red flags right off the bat there.
To go everywhere. They just travel there. For them, it's a short flight. And when we got married, I was like, man, I would really love to get out there. We're finally making it happen. So I will be completely off air. Also, if you are watching the show right now, hit subscribe.
No, don't do that. Don't do that at all. And again, if you've been mistakenly coerced into hitting that subscribe button, unsubscribe from that goddamn channel right the hell away. But again, that is just her announcing that she will not be on the air for the next 6 or 7 days or a week or whatever she said there. And that's because she's heading to Russia to go collect the check. She's heading to Russia, I believe. I don't think she said it in that one, but I think I heard reported that was for some like economic forum or some bullshit, which is a great kind of cover. It's a great backstory to have. In fact, if you do want to go there and meet with, I don't know, some high profile Russians maybe and see, how you can get some scratch on the back end, let's just say. But all right, let's dive on to this one because this was, before we do that, I might as well show you this one because this was the footage coming out of one of the recent Ukrainian strikes on Russian naval vessels. And this was a video, I'm assuming, taken by one of the Russian military or naval personnel, established at this base. But it just shows the clear chaos, just the erratic fire and air defenses put in place there by the Russians. And I think I would have to assume it gives the Ukrainian military some pretty good insight as to what air defense is and how the air defenses act when a drone does come into play, when an attack does become evident. So again, let's check this out. Just a real quick video of some of the air defense reactions by the Russians trying to shoot down a Ukrainian drone before it in fact struck their Russian vessel and were unsuccessful.
Video footage of last week's FP-1/2 drone attack on a Russian frigate in the port of Novorossiysk has been released in social media. Frigate Admiral Essen and a Project 1239 missile ship were struck by Ukrainian unmanned forces on May 23rd.
Now, I like to think that I know a little bit about a little bit as far as it goes on these, these different topics and situations and stuff. What is the blue? What's the blue? Are those jammers? Is that a Russian jamming system? Is that a visible kind of radar wave being sent out? Like, what is the blue beam that we're seeing in the background? I haven't seen too many people kind of address that. If I've missed something and it's obvious, please let me know. But I'm just, obviously the tracers are the tracers and everything else, but I don't really know what that blue beam is in the background.
Videos capture moment of the precision strikes of Ukrainian drones. According to Robert Brovdy, commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces.
I mean, you can see it's trying to aim it directly at the drone, I would have to assume. So it would be, my best guess would some sort of jamming, some sort of remote jamming, where you have to get it in the beam. And if you hold it in the beam long enough, it'll kind of maybe hopefully push the drone off target. And again, this is all speculation, I'm guessing. I've never seen, to the best of my knowledge, anything like that as far as like just really piercing blue like lights of beams of light that are attempting to take down a drone. And I've seen a lot of drone videos. I've seen a lot of Ukrainian strikes. I've seen a lot of Russian strikes. I've seen a lot of air defenses trying to shoot down. We've talked about, the drone squads that are roaming around Kherson and in other areas as well. But I have not seen that blue light, to the best of my knowledge. And again, unless it's kind of slipped through the cracks as far as something that I've seen. But anybody else in the chat know what that might be?
Frigate Admiral Essen and the small missile ship Sivich were targeted in an overnight attack, and the extent of any damage remains unclear. It should be noted that the Admiral Essen.
I mean, just look at the chaos of the fire, though. I mean, look at the trace of fire.
Essen and the small missile ship Sivich.
You got it actually shooting level at points. I mean, God knows what else is on the other side of this. You got the fire coming from the left-hand side, which eventually almost looks like it's hitting its own ship when the drone gets low enough to impact. It's like it's just completely erratic. They're just throwing up everything they possibly can in hopes of hitting this drone. And there's no kind of like real air defenses, no real established air defense in place. It's just kind of hope and pray, right? Shoot and fucking pray. Hopefully you hit the thing.
Were targeted in an overnight attack.
See the drone here. Here's a drone right coming in right here. So you can see, how erratic the fire is. And then once it starts getting lower to impact, watch how the air defense fire actually lowers and levels with it, which is something you probably don't want to do, is shoot your own ship. I'm just saying.
The extent of any damage remains unclear.
There it is coming in.
It should be noted that the Admiral Essen is
and look how level, look at how level the air defense fire is on that, right? I mean, I'll go back step by step. Look at how fucking low it is. It's almost level with the ship right here in the background.
Is the second multi-purpose frigate of the Project 11356R Burevestnik class. It is capable of carrying caliber cruise missiles, which Russia has used in strikes against Ukraine. Its sister ships include Admiral Grigorovich and Admiral Makarov.
But like I said, the Ukrainian intel, the intelligence agencies, obviously the military commanders will be able to utilize this footage, will be able to take a look at this and dissect this with, I'm sure, a lot better quality software and with a lot better detail than we're able to do here. And we'll be able to say, okay, the guns are firing from this position, that position. This is how many of this gun that they have. Obviously they'd probably be able to right off the bat tell you what the blue light is. Anybody figure that out? I'm curious. Like I said, I have no problem raising my right hand and saying that I have absolutely no fucking idea. Looks like raspberry jam to me. No, I know I don't know. I'm curious. I'm scrolling through the chat right now to see if anybody has any guesses as to what that is. Forever Young says it's space lasers. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Is that Marjorie Taylor Greene's guess? Cats and jam looks like jammer to me. That's my best guess. AI says they're directed energy weapons, says Fish Delight. High energy lasers. AI says they're directed energy weapons. Real quick, let me just see if I can. Directed energy weapons? Get the fuck out of here. I don't think I will. Let me see if there's any like videos that we can see which kind of detail that's exactly what's going on. Let's see here. Directed energy weapons. In Part 3, Space Systems Command, animated space threats, U.S. directed energy weapon systems. This is what they use to start the fires in Hawaii. Jesus Christ. Laser weapons are no longer confined to science fiction. What's this one right here?
Hello value viewers, I hope you're all doing very well. It's late July 2025 and today we're taking our first look at directed energy laser weapons. The type we're going to be looking at will be sea-based close-in weapon system or CWES. We've got two Arleigh Burke Flight 3s here. All of their weapons have been disabled apart from their CWES. Arleigh Burke 1, that. Although there's perfect...
I'm trying to skip to see where they kind of deploy those, if there's any sign that they deploy those lasers at all or anything like that, if it's visible, because I'm sure a lot of these systems are just not visible to the naked eye, whereas that one absolutely was visible to the naked eye, this one here. But again, I appreciate all of the guesses and input. I was just, like I said, trying to figure out what the hell that was.
All three serve in Russia's Black Sea Fleet. In January last year, Ukrainian Navy Commander Alexei Naispapa stated that even
they're
before
definitely being manipulated, right? They're definitely, I don't know if they're being manually manipulated or automated. You know, they're being manipulated, you know, automated. But you know, they're definitely being manipulated to whether to the flight of the drone, the flight path of the drone. So I mean, that's my best guess before we have any definitive answers is definitely that it's some sort of jamming systems. I'm going with you guys in the chat, so I appreciate. Oh, what's this say? Hold on. I think I just saw somebody right here. What's this say? Anti-drone ADS laser dazzler or countermeasures. Military systems sometimes use laser illuminators to dazzle or mark targets. These can appear as blue beams. Anti-drone ADS laser dazzlers or countermeasure. Military systems sometimes use lasers, illuminators to dazzle or mark targets. So basically marking it for the other anti-defense systems, or I would assume to dazzle it means maybe to kind of confuse the drone. And again, I'm just speculating here, just going off of my, my limited knowledge over these systems. But to dazzle, I would assume that means to kind of throw off its course, throw off its track. If you can kind of blind it with this beam, if you can get into some of its sensors. And again, I'm making this up and pulling this out of my ass as I go. But I think I'm kind of on the right track as far as dazzle is concerned. And obviously, if you're mocking targets, I think that's pretty self-evident. You're just making it clear for the guns around you to be able to to target, to locate that drone going over. So I'm a silly girl. Very much appreciate that insight as well. Like I always said, there's always somebody more intelligent, more up to speed and educated in the chat. And I have absolutely no problem deferring to you guys to keep me up to speed and educated on some of these things. So I very much appreciate you guys. All right. What do you say we dive into this Preston Stewart update? Because this is, again, right in line with what we've been talking about over the last few weeks, at least, if not more, which is the willingness of the Russians, whether it's the mill bloggers, the military experts, or even some in the command and the leadership roles, now being able to call out, now having the willingness to call out the possibility, at least, of a Ukrainian breakthrough, and to a large extent the successes that the Ukrainians have been having, whether it's on the the Mariupol to Melitopol highway into Crimea, whether that is against in having their long range and medium range strikes onto different oil facilities, whether that's striking the ports in which the Russians need to export that oil, or whether that's just in different areas on the front line. More and more Russians are starting to recognize and call those successes out, and basically not painting a rosy picture for what's likely to come for the Russians as we continue to get into the summer offensive months here. But this is Preston Stewart detailing the Russian analyst warns of Ukrainian breakthrough, which I think the more and more we see the willingness of the Russian mill bloggers to recognize what's taking place, not only on the front lines, but with the drone advancements, with the the lack of efficacy as it pertains to the Russian air defenses, both inside of occupied Ukraine and also Russian territory itself. As we've seen over the last few months, the ability that the Ukrainians have to kind of just pick targets at will, and and strike those targets at will. So let's see if we can dive into this, but it's going to be obviously a good sign and shows the momentum going in the right direction. The more and more willing the Russians are to look at the battlefield, to look at this war in general, and to pick out the difficulties and the dangers that are posed to them by continuing the way that they have for so long, losing the amount of equipment that they've lost, losing the amount of troops that they've lost, and obviously not gaining the territory or anywhere near the territory that they hoped for, or not even remotely close to the goals that they had originally stated, almost 5 years ago, just in 2022 when they started this war.
So there's more Russian panic right now than we've seen in a long time, with some calling on thousands of reinforcements to be sent forward before they lose key terrain. As we've talked about countless times in recent weeks, this is all part of Ukraine's plan, and from what we can tell, it seems to be working. Isolate a portion of the battlefield with middle to long-range strikes, then methodically clear it. That's happening right now in Zaporizhia, and Russian analysts are noticing a negative trend for their forces. Now, stepping back, big picture here, this 2026 campaign, from what we can tell, is Ukraine has focused heavily on the destruction or suppression of Russian air defenses. Every one of those systems, every one of those radars that goes down opens up a new corridor for Ukrainian drones to fly through. And they are every single day, striking Russian logistics, 1 to 200 kilometers from the front line. Over time, that has a significant impact on Russia's ability to maintain offensive operations at the front, which makes it easier to kill or capture the Russian soldiers that are forward, and very difficult to move reinforcements up to hold the line. That is what we're seeing right now in one specific area of the front. Turning to Russian media, Rybar talking about this, saying logistics problems are deeper than they seem. He said, quote, "The situation in Russia's southern regions is becoming increasingly threatening."
And again, for context, this is coming from the Russian side. This is not, Ukrainian intelligence. These aren't Ukrainian military bloggers. These aren't people that are pro-Ukrainian. This is coming from the Russians detailing logistic problems, which we've detailed on this show, in their resupply to Crimea, resupply to the front, increasingly becoming more difficult the more that the Ukrainians are able to, again, expand that kill zone. We talked about how the kill zone as it pertained to the front lines was somewhere between a mile, 5 miles. Now that's being expanded to, 15 kilometers, 20 kilometers of that kill zone, in which the drones are able to, again, mitigate the amount of trucks or vehicles or ammunition or aid that's allowed to get through, which is, again, having an impact on the frontline soldiers, the morale of the frontline soldiers. And this is increasingly, as we're seeing the Ukrainians, hammer away at Crimea. So if the troops in Crimea are getting less aid, less food, less fuel, less water, less ammunition, less weaponry, while also getting hammered by the Ukrainians, you can clearly see what kind of impact and effect that will have if that persists, right? So again, just for context, this is coming from the Russian side detailing these problems, which is, again, not something you typically see, and we're seeing it more and more and more as of late.
Since early May, Ukrainian forces have significantly increased the number of drone strikes against vehicles transporting various goods to Kherson and Zaporizhia, as well as Crimea. There is a risk of shortages of certain goods on the peninsula, Crimean Peninsula, and fuel sales are already restricted. The threat is not only the disruption of the Crimean holiday season or the shortage of certain products. Strikes against cargo carriers on the peninsula directly impact the capabilities of the Russian armed forces on the southern fronts, where the situation is already precarious. Now, this
again,
is
just calling it a precarious situation is a pretty big detachment from the way that these Russian, again, military experts, whatever they call themselves, mil bloggers, would be speaking about this. They'd be like the Trump administration is just desperate with the Iran war to pry victory out of the jaws of defeat, and to, again, if they have to make up outright some sort of territory that they have to say that they gained to get some sort of propaganda victory, that's what they'll do. But now it's being recognized, like I said, by more and more people on the Russian side, that the situation is very precarious, and obviously that the Ukrainians are having pretty big success against the supply lines, whether it's on the front, and obviously there's strikes inside of occupied Ukraine and inside of Russia.
Area that's gotten a little bit of attention in recent weeks. We've started to see Ukrainian offensive operations, kind of localized counterattacks in the West Zaporizhia direction. Now, zooming into a deep state map here, what we're seeing, this red area all occupied by Russia right now, we've seen just in the last few weeks, every single day, new footage coming out showing Ukrainian deep strikes on logistics down in Mariupol, Verdansk, all the way down into Crimea. So what Ukraine is doing is kind of isolating this entire area.
And again, diving on to what he's saying and just jumping on the back of that, if I could throw this on your screen as well, just to detail, again, some of the even minor successes on the front that the Ukrainians are having. Here's kind of an area we haven't talked about in a while. We've been talking about the Zaporizhia front down in here near Stepnorisk a lot. Obviously, Pokrovsk, and in this area was a big area of contention as well for quite some time. Here's Pokrovsk right here. And then obviously another area of the battlefield that is quite heavily contended here and talked about is this area, which we've talked about time and time again, this fortress belt between Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Drushivka, Konstantinivka. But if I go down here just south of Pokrovsk, I did recognize and see some pretty substantial movements, as it were, Ukrainians gaining ground. And if I went back just a couple days, let me see, I think it was down here, this area down here near Ivanivka, down by Zeleny High, Nova, Katsevsky, and stuff like that. So if you watch this, if I go back just a couple days and then I continue here, you can see that territory jump? See that shift right there in the territory? So that tells me that deep state has seen enough evidence. They've seen enough intelligence to suggest, to prove, to say without a shadow of a doubt, to be able to change their maps, to say that the Ukrainians have made successes in this area, right? So if I go back, this is 28. This is today. This is yesterday. This is the day before. You can see that pretty big advancement there of territory lost by the Russians. It looks like it was up there near Zeleny High, this area here. And now if you go back just a day, it looks like at least these three villages, as it were, right here that you can see, have been either liberated or at least the Russians, to a certain extent, a good amount of their forces have been pushed back beyond those settlements. And again, I don't think that these are, very substantial settlements by any stretch of the imagination. They don't look very big, almost looks like a single road as far as that's concerned, and pretty much the same thing in Tolstoy there. I think this is a little bigger, but not too much bigger. But again, if you go back to the 27th, here's the 28th. So again, that's showing me that deep state has seen enough evidence, enough intelligence, and enough reporting to actually detail that on their map to suggest that the Russians have lost territory in that area. Right. So again, an area that we haven't spoken about in quite some time, but I thought that went pretty well with what Preston was just talking about as far as the successes, not only in Crimea. We talked about Azov flying around Mariupol. We actually spoke about that with Preston on this show. So again, if you didn't check out that conversation, if you didn't catch that interview, feel free to hop on to the YouTube, search out, Boston Brian, Preston Stewart, and that'll bring up that conversation. Some really good things discussed as far as that was concerned. But I'll let him continue here with just a little more of this.
Making it hard for Russia to continue logistics. And we saw it just a few days ago. Russia shut down a portion of the highway. They're constantly getting concerned. I mean, we had footage earlier today where there was just truck after truck after truck after truck that got blown up. So this isn't like a threat that Russia has to take into consideration. It is rapidly approaching the point of like a significant number of their military vehicles, military transports are being destroyed well before they can get anywhere near the front. So this is the area Rybar's talking about. And then zooming in here to West Zaporizhia, the Stepnohorsk, Primorsky, Stepov area. This is where we've seen localized Ukrainian counterattacks recently. They are on the verge of retaking everything that Russia gained over the course of the last year. And there's some concern from Rybar that this could actually be a place that the Ukrainian armed forces could break out and push through the Russian lines. Personally, I think that's a bit doomer on the Russian side. I'm not sure that's to Ukraine's advantage right now. If they could, I'm not even sure that.
And again, we've talked about this on the show here, the effectiveness in the Ukrainians in this territory as well. And this, on this front, this is the down here in the Zaporizhia front, as we're talking about, Stepnorisk right down here. This was, if you'll remember correctly, we detailed the Russians were, again, trying to utilize the banks of the Sea of Azov. They kind of put together this three-pronged attack. The Ukrainians managed to put together a counterattack, and then they've been able to kind of build upon that counterattack. Obviously, been throwing in more troops and people into the area, and it seems to be having the success. Obviously, now, let's see if we can go back a couple days and see what. So it doesn't look like much has moved in that. Yeah, here you go right here. This is the last time that the Russians lost territory. You can see that they were in, and I'll put this on the screen here. I'll get out of the way, put that big on the screen so you guys can see it. So take a look at this territory here in and around Stepnorisk, and you can see as we progress, the territory that was lost there. See that big chunk taken out of Stepnorisk there? So again, that's kind of the evidence of the effectiveness of the Ukrainian counterattack. as it pertains to that area of the front. Obviously, trying to mitigate the ability that the Russians have to get up into Zaporizhia. Obviously, we discussed how vital it is for the Ukrainians to get down into this territory so they can establish some control and not have the Russians insulate themselves even further as far as control over the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. So obviously a lot of eyes on this area for good reason. And we're going to continue bringing you the updates and the insights that we hear about, and kind of filling everybody in on the news. So let's see if we can jump back into Preston. I just want to show you that these different areas. So it's a lot easier for me, and I'm sure there's other people in the chat where it's a lot easier for you guys to kind of visually, look at or envision what's actually taking place when you can see it on the map. And again, so I appreciate you guys sticking with me as I detail the places we're speaking about on the Deep State map and on Google Earth and stuff.
They would. That's a pretty significant risk. But nonetheless, interesting that we're seeing Russia getting more and more concerned all of a sudden in the middle of 2026 that their lines might not be able to hold. Turning back to Rybar, they say the enemy has been attacking on the Kaminsky area for a long time and has managed to advance in several areas, pushing back Russian forces. Stepnohorsk and Plovny have been nearly lost, along with virtually all territorial gains made by the Russian armed forces during that offensive that began in early 2025. We've heard this from a number of Russian analysts at this point, talking about how the Ukrainian localized counterattacks are taking back everything that's been gained over the course of a year. Think about the losses that Russia would have sustained just trying to take this territory, and you blink, and in the matter of a couple of weeks, it's all gone. We're hearing this from a number of Russian channels as well. Callsign Ositin, Russian mill blogger, on May 22nd, talking about the fighting here in the Stepnohorsk area, said, quote, "Hold on, brothers." And then he followed up a few days later on May 24th by saying, quote, "It's very hard for our soldiers there. There are too damn many Ukrainians. I still don't understand where they get so many people from. Our guys are repelling wave after wave, but they just keep coming and coming." I repeat again, if we don't get either drone operators or just thousands of drones there right now, it will be even harder for us in the future. And surrendering the city of
And I get a kick out of it. I really do. It just makes my day to hear the urgency and how desperate these people are in trying to call out this situation, and how really desperate it is. You can hear him kind of confused on how the hell the Ukrainians managed to keep putting people into the fight. They say they take somebody out. Next thing you know, there's somebody jumping right into the fight. They take out one drone. There's 10 more behind it. So again, to see them that, they're this kind of erratic, this upset, and this kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, fucking disillusioned as to how the Ukrainians are having the success that they're having is a good sign, right? Doesn't show a very successful, doesn't show morale on the up and ups, as it were, as it pertains to the Russian military. And again, as we continue to get into these longer days, as we continue to get into the warmer weather and having these, the ability to attack increase, it's good to see the momentum on the Ukrainian side, obviously.
And Horse would be a huge loss. It's time to solve this acute problem in this direction. The lack of drones, because several settlements before Stepnohorsk have already surrendered. And the news from there will not be good at this pace. And we're seeing a number of, very pro-Russian, Russian nationalist mill bloggers talk about the troubling direction that the war is going in. He's not the only one. We've got a couple more to get to here. Now, in talking about what comes next, this is where Rybar takes it from it's a difficult situation at the front to they might be looking at a Ukrainian breakthrough at some point in the near future. He says there's a risk that the enemy will not only restore the status quo, but launch an offensive along the Kaminsky-Sherbaki line. So essentially this entire area on the map here. He says, considering the Ukrainian forces have already partially destroyed the logistics of southern Russia and the land corridor to Crimea, it is not difficult to imagine what will happen if the Ukrainian armed forces manage to break the Russian forces' defenses along this line. The Russian army will have to deploy reinforcements along the route to Vasilivka, the roads which are already under significant attack. So that's coming up here from the south. 100%. Talk about the isolation of the battlefield. This is the main road moving up into this area. So yeah, this entire road is under heavy Ukrainian drone attack right now. Rybar says in the worst case scenario, stabilizing the situation will require the deployment of additional forces via routes such as Tokmak and the more distant Berdansk and Mariupol. Even the delivery of civilian cargo along these routes is already severely disrupted. So we are seeing...
it doesn't take a military expert, right? You don't need to be a genius to see if the Russians have to pull troops from other areas of the front and to kind of install them into this area in order to, again, mitigate the damages that the Ukrainians are able to effect against the military. Obviously, that's going to open up different paths. That's going to weaken other spots on the front for the Ukrainians to be able to exploit and utilize. So again, anything that draws, any amount of troops out of a certain other area is good. If they're going to have to continuously throw people into this fight, and we see that the Ukrainians are having, pretty good success against taking them out. Obviously, the vehicles and the resupply vehicles aren't having much of a shot at all on a lot of these roads. But like I said, the the chaos that has ensued from these strikes, and obviously the effectiveness that they've seen, is a good thing to see here.
This three-phase plan carried out by Ukraine in 2026: destroy or degrade or suppress Russian air defense, opens lines in their coverage across the country. As those lines open up, more strikes deeper into Russian territory, making it harder for any of these logistics to move forward and provide troops, ammunition, food, water, batteries, anything. Harder and harder for Russia to hold on. And we're seeing now, I would expect to see some countermeasures put in place by Russia. We haven't really seen that quite yet. And the strikes, the deep strikes are taking a toll. We should look at this very similar to when HIMARS rolled out on the battlefield early in the war. Russia knew that was coming. They did not adapt, and they suffered some pretty significant losses over the course of probably 3 to 5 months, where there were near daily high value targets getting hit by Ukrainian forces. Russia adapted. They found out ways to shoot down, new ways to shoot down the HIMARS. They moved a lot of their locations outside of HIMARS range, which was more doable then than it is now. These drones are flying.
And I don't think he's wrong. Obviously, I think at some point the Russians are either going to, try to utilize drone nets or, some sort of, technological advancements in order to try to mitigate against the effectiveness of these drones, especially on these roads that are resupplying Crimea. So again, the fact that, the Russians are going to have to, step up their defenses is not a stretch, but it's just going to, the question is how effective those kind of defensive measures are going to be, right? How much can they actually mitigate the damage? How effective can those, the jammers or the drone nets or whatever, they decide to put in place to try to stop whatever's been taken, what's been going on recently, then, it remains to be seen kind of how effective, and if they're just going to be throwing money and resources and people into putting up drone nets, where again, we've seen drone nets, they can be, they can be penetrated, right? If you send up enough of those drones, if you kind of sacrifice enough of the drones to take down the net to begin with, that opens up areas. If you have open areas, that allows drones to get underneath the nets to begin with. If you can get underneath the nets to begin with, it takes away from the entire effectiveness of the drone netting to begin with. So not to say that it hasn't had its ability to stop drones or to save people or to mitigate the damages, because it has, but it only lasts so long. And again, without constant kind of upkeep and maintenance, those drone nets tend to get hit to shit and kind of, they're down pretty quickly if in fact, the enemy decides to expend enough drones to take it down. So, whatever their resources are going to be, whatever resources they're going to use to try to again fix this in some way or to mitigate against it in some way, we'll be here covering it, and we're going to have to cover again how effective they're going to be, which again just leads to the Ukrainians again just upping the ante, changing their tactics, changing the way they go about drone technology and hunting down the Russians. So it's a big cat and mouse game. That's what war really is. It's just one side will have these technological advancements that will lead them to have an advantage for a period of time until the other side is able to again come up with their own advancements to mitigate against those advancements. Same thing that we saw in what's a good comparison. The battle of the Atlantic, right? We saw that the German U-boats had, ridiculous success until radar, until sonar and stuff started becoming more, usable, more affordable, and it started to be implemented in a lot of the different American ships or British ships. And then you saw a turn, and then you saw that it was the Allies that were having more success against the U-boats, or more success than they were having, right? The U-boats were effectively losing more than they were having success at some point. And then it kind of changed again when the U-boats saw that they were able to kind of congregate in this area in the Atlantic where the air defenses, the Allies, weren't able to send up the planes. They didn't have the range to get into this area in the Atlantic. So then they started to see another kind of the second happy time, as they called it. And then it had to be kind of mitigated against. The Allies had to develop some sort of tactics, and whether that was, the convoy system or, the development of different aircraft that had longer ranges on it. So you can see the cat and mouse game and how it kind of flows, ebbs and flows back and forth. But this is typically what happens in a war. That's how you try to get the upper hand against your enemy, and then the enemy tries to stop you having the upper hand against them, and then it just continuously draws this battle for innovation, right? To get a foot up, to get a leg up in the battlefield. So I'll let you guys go for the day. We'll start thanking some people. I really do appreciate you guys for joining me, for sticking with me on this show, for getting us to this point. Passing 20,000 subscribers was a really big goal of ours, and I can't tell you how appreciative I am of you guys getting us to that goal. But goals are meant to be achieved, and then we set new goals. So hopefully by the time midterm comes around, you guys can hit that subscribe button enough to get us to 25,000 subscribers and beyond, obviously. But what do you say we get into thanking some people on the old Venmo machine that was kind enough up here in the corner to take a picture, send a buck or two. If you can find a couple quarters in the couch cushions, send them over in Venmo. That would be very much appreciated. I'd be very grateful of that. Again, I don't drink coffee, but if you want to buy me a Powerade or a Gatorade or something, you can do that through Venmo. Obviously, super chat, super stickers in the YouTube chat as well. But let's say we get into thanking some people here as we do at the end of every show. Thank you so much to Bry Guy. What's up, BH? Appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much for the $5 contribution because YouTube taxes. Slava Ukraine, right back at you, Bry Guy. Very much appreciated. Thank you so much to Yakov as well for your kind and generous donation as well. Not only what you do down there in the chat as a mod, but also, contributing to the show as well. Very much appreciate you. What'd you say? You put in just dollar signs? Love it. Love it. Very much appreciate you, brother. Thank you, Geneva H, as always. Thank you so much to Donna D for your contributions as well. Thank you so much to Nina C, Damon C, Kathy A. Thank you so much to Nancy as well over the last couple days. Roger, Karen, Jeff, Allison. I really do appreciate you guys and all the love and support that you've shown this channel. Thank you guys again for getting us to nearly $2,000 raised already on the first day of our Help 99, our second honorary campaign with the NAFO 69 Sniffing Brigade. See if I can just throw that back on there. See if we've had any shift. Yeah, I got to go down, find the campaign. There you are. How you doing? How you doing there, Chief? How you doing there, Chief? There it is right there. Oh, you guys are amazing. I appreciate you. All right. So we're at 1,684 euro raised already, which again, I don't even think 24 hours into this thing. So to have 8% of it complete already is it's mind blowing to see how many people actually step up at a time of need. But like I said, we're trying to send another vehicle, a NAFO 3.0 truck to the 3rd Operational Battalion, which is an artillery platoon. We're trying to help the gentlemen that have the big booms. Obviously, we know how necessary and important the artillery is in the military of Ukraine. So anytime we could help them get to and fro the battlefield, get to and fro the front lines to wherever they're stationed behind the front lines, to be able to get them ammunition, weapons, food, fuel, anything like that, water, those vehicles will help, and obviously help them keep them safe as they mobilize around the front lines, as they mobilize around the battlefield. And hopefully it is the vehicle itself, if they find themselves in a position that takes the damage. That's the kind of the whole point in this. And then obviously that just shows us the necessity to continue raising funds and to continue sending trucks because of the short lifespan, but but because of how valuable they are to save the lives of the people. If the soldiers can get out of that broken and wrecked truck and walk back and live to fight another day, that is the fucking goal. So thank you guys so much. Like I said, going to the 3rd Operational Battalion, an artillery platoon, which is, again, pretty cool that we get to help any aspect, any people, any portion of the Ukrainian military. So thank you guys so much. And these are the fantastic patches. I know I'm biased, but some of the best patches as it pertains to the NAFO campaigns. I don't think I've ever seen better ones, to tell you the truth. So hopefully they catch the eyes of some people roaming this website, and hopefully we get some donations, some some stray shots as far as donations, just because we have the best patches. So I know you guys are under a lot of stress. I know you guys watch a lot of channels, and a lot of channels ask you guys to donate and contribute to certain things. And like I said, if you can't, just share it out. If you can, put it out on your social medias. If you can share it out to your friends, family, co-workers, even if you can't donate yourself, you're doing a huge service. And it is greatly appreciated. I want you to know that means just as much as anybody that is in the financial position to give. So again, Help 99, NAFO campaign, 69 Sniffer Brigade, Boston Brian, Summer of Drones. Let's fucking go. Let's see how quickly we can get this thing established and done. So I appreciate you guys. All right, let's thank some people over here on YouTube. Thank you so much. We got Sarah up first. Thank you, Brian from England. Very much appreciated. Keep calm and crush fascism. I love that. I love it. Thank you so much, Sarah, for the £2. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Jeff. Hi, Crustacean Nation. I'm listening to Boston Brian. Who wins a staring contest between Ken Paxton and Kash Patel? And more importantly, how is the winner determined? Well, that's what I said. I think Ken Paxton is just like the white version of Kash Patel. You know what I mean? If you put him in put Cash Patel in a 3D printer and said, "Give me this, but white," I think it would come out Ken Paxton. I think you're spot on as far as that one's concerned. So thank you so much. I appreciate you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, again. 2 Jeffs. Hi, everyone, says Jeff with the $20 contribution. Much appreciated, my friend. Thank you so much. Love seeing everybody in here today. Thank you to JD for the $2 lobster contribution going right in the swear jar. And like I said, everybody else that reaches out at different points in time and gets a piece of merch over at bostonbrian.com, signs up at the Patreon at patreon.com/bostonbrian, signs up for a YouTube membership just underneath me here. Should be a button somewhere in this general vicinity-ish where it says sign up or join or member or something like that. For less than a gallon of gas, you can be a member of this channel for a month. And again, for a month, I think that's some pretty good value, some pretty good bang for your buck, considering what it's costing you guys to fill up your tanks right now. I digress. Like I said, I'm consistently biased in that in that regard, but I do love you guys. I do appreciate you guys. Thank you so much to the mods. Thank you so much to the best chat on earth. As we typically say, fuck Donald Trump, Chinga la migra, Slava Ukraina, Heroyam Slava. And again, if you want to show everybody what side of history you're on, if you want to show yourself as being part of the resistance, part of the opposition, go over to bostonbrian.com, check out the merch site, Blunt Politics merch shop, and we have some fantastic gear on there that will absolutely leave no questions as to what side of history you guys stand on. So big salute to the mods. Thank you guys so much for the best chat on earth, and I will see you guys Sunday for the main show. So I'll be around Sunday, 1 p.m. here on the East Coast. That's 10 a.m. on the West Coast. Figure it out if you live anywhere in between that. And I do appreciate you guys. If you could hit that like button on the way out, if you haven't done so already, that would be fantastic. And again, if you're not subscribed already to the channel, if you think you are, but you're not sure, check after the show. And if you haven't clicked that button, please click it for me. We're trying to get to 25K. I think we're getting close to 20,500, almost halfway there to 21,000 already, which is pretty cool to see. I think we also hit our first $1 million, not $1 million. That would be fantastic. A 1 million view month. I know a lot of that came from a very specific short that did really well, but I'll take it where I can get it. So any month we can, contribute to 1 million views on this platform is a pretty good month, right? So I appreciate you guys. Thank you for getting me to this point and hopefully well beyond this point. And I appreciate your passion, your aggression, you guys sticking with this as long as you have, diving into the bullshit, the propaganda, the lies of the mainstream media, obviously the Trump administration, and allowing me to call that out for you guys. And then whether or not it's just you find some fantastic some fantastic community there in the chat, or again, I do find some you do find some value and some benefit of watching this show because of the opinions and the facts and what we talk about. Either way, if you like the show, you like what you watch and you like what you hear, and subscribe, please. Like this at the very least. And then thank you again to everybody that's contributing to our Help 99 NAFO campaign, Summer of Drones, Boston Brian, Best Patches on Earth, Slava Ukraina, Heroyam Slava. I'll see you guys Sunday. All right. Appreciate you. Thanks, guys. Peace. I think. One of these buttons. Who muted my mic? I'm pissed off that somebody muted my mic. I just want to come back on for Roxanne and say, yeehaw, fuck the law. That's right. That's right. Fuck fascism. Fuck Donald Trump. Fuck the rest of these pricks. Yeehaw, fuck the law. I do appreciate you guys. I'm out. I'll see you guys Sunday. I do my best, Roxanne. I do my best. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for your love and support.
We're inviting Americans from all across the country to come.
Here's a thought. Grow a sack, fill it with some balls.
Мій позивний танцор. Я представник 72-ї бригади. Дякую тобі і твоїм підписникам за цей донат, за цю чудову машину, яка буде нас возити усіх на позиції, захищати Україну і наближати перемогу. Разом усі до перемоги. Дякую.
Kidney has a very special place in the heart. It's an incredible thing. About to officially name the undisputed. When did this come out? Water coming here is dead. Eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people that live there.
My superpower is being honest. I will eat my neighbors.
Yesterday's a hard word for me.
I mean, they've been conserved since the time of lobsters, right? There weren't trees around when lobsters first manifested themselves on the planet.
I'm just dandy. I got a bowl of chocolate pudding in my underpants.
You know what uranium is, right? It's a thing called nuclear weapons and other things. Like lots of things are done with uranium, including some bad things. Venezuela. Did you just see Maduro? Venezuela.
Вітаю, Бостон Брайан. Мій позивний танцор. Я представник 72-ї бригади. Дякую тобі і твоїм підписникам за цей донат, за цю чудову машину, яка буде нас возити усіх на позиції, захищати Україну і наближати перемогу. Разом усі до перемоги. Дякую.
The population in Thailand is 63 million people. It is twice the size of Wyoming. Its chief exports are textiles, footwear, and rice. Each year, approximately 13,000 people are killed in car accidents in Thailand.
I said mud, I said crud. You fall into some crud or something? I'm just dandy. I got a bowl of chocolate pudding in my underpants. He says rectum damn near killed him. Taking him back to Nevada where he's wanted for banging horses.
When you ran out the healthy arms, you ran out of really healthy. They had great arms, but they ran out. It's.
Go fuck yourself.
Referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small.
Always calling me Little Marco. But I'll admit, the guy, he's taller than me, he's like 6'2", which is why I don't understand why his hands are the size of someone who's 5'2".
For the rest of my life, I have the curse that I have little hands. Little hands. The big, fat, sloppy